Wow. Yin Xiaoxiao let out a cute little sigh in Lin An's arms. In the distance, the place where the sea and the sky seem to be shimmering with sparkling waves, the sea reflects the bright moon, the reflection of the starry sky and the big fish that jump out of the sea from time to time, just like fish shadows flickering in the galaxy. The waves crashed against the beach, and the sound of the waves seemed to have a rhythm. The black eagle landed, Lin An easily jumped, and landed on the beach. Putting down Yin Xiaoxiao, she still followed Lin An tightly, as if she was reluctant to part. Have you ever been to the beach? Lin An asked curiously. He has lived inland for 2 lifetimes, and the chance to see the sea is still very small. Yin Xiaoxiao shook her head, still holding him, leaning against him to look at the sea, her eyes straightened. No, it's the first time I've come to the seaside. I told my mother before that when she gets better, we will travel together, go to the beach to play, and eat a lot of delicious food. Yin Xiao took a deep breath. Time flies. She even felt a little guilty. In these precarious days, it seems that when she is alone, she thinks of Lin An more than when she thinks of her mother. I can't sleep at night, I toss and turn, and I always think of Lin An. In the beginning, she often had nightmares, and she even shed tears when she thought of her mother alone. But now, Yin Xiaoxiao hugged Lin An tightly, feeling a little guilty and even blamed herself. I'm really a bad girl. Lin An rubbed her head and said softly, at least, when Auntie left, she didn't feel sad, and she didn't have to struggle as hard as we did. Maybe, this is a good thing, right? At least, it's better than most people. Say, 3-3. Lin An hesitated, but Yin Xiao carefully understood. She raised her head and didn't want to look at the sea anymore. Looking at Lin An made her feel more at ease and happy. Well, I'm not sad. Do you remember that day? When I was chatting with my mother alone? She says. Lin An quickly recalled. It was the first time he went to Yin Xiaoxiao's house, and it was the first time he saw her mother Fang Lan, that gentle and intelligent woman. After chatting a few words with him, he went to the living room to stay, while Yin Xiaoxiao went over to talk to her. After a while, Fang Lan died. Remember? Lin An replied. Yin Xiaoxiao's eyes were a little reminiscent. Do you know what my mother told me? She said she was really tired. Yin Xiaoxiao sighed. She said that when she was always facing me, she couldn't say frankly how uncomfortable she was. But because you appeared, because I saw the way I was smiling unconsciously when I was discussing you. She really doesn't want to be in pain anymore. She said that it's not just physical discomfort, but the most important thing is to watch me suffer and suffer because of her. Yin Xiaoxiao suddenly laughed in a low voice. She asked playfully. You know, what else did my mother say? I don't know. Lin An's chin rested on her hair, rubbing lightly. Yin Xiaoxiao smiled and said, she said, don't give yourself to a bad man just because of her. Auntie is quite accurate. Lin An also laughed. I think the reason why she chose to leave me so easily and so quickly is probably because she wants me to be free. She let go of her hand, stepped on the sand, and walked gently towards the beach. Lin An followed her. Duan Xiaoxiao squatted down, put her hand on the sand gently, the waves hit her, brushed her fingers, and backed away. I want me to have the right to choose my own life, the right to choose a way of life, to give me the freedom to love someone, and to give me real freedom, not for anyone, but for myself. Hearing this, Lin An felt a little complicated and asked in a low voice, then why didn't you say anything and follow me again? I didn't help much either, in fact, you could have just. Lin An didn't finish speaking, only saw Yin Xiaoxiao in the moonlight, tilted his head, squatted on the ground, and looked at him sideways. Her eyes are shining. Hee hee. She smiled stupidly. Since you helped me to bury my mother after your busy work, I thought about it. You are a bad man, and you will definitely make me happy. If I choose you, I should be happy. After Yin Xiao's novel was over, he was a little puffed up again. I just didn't expect that you really treated me as a little wife, and you were so blatant. Lin An smirked, squatted down, and kissed her. I'm sorry. It's nothing. Anyway, it's so messy now. Maybe someone will die tomorrow. Maybe I will too, so, if I can be with you, even for a day, even if it's a little bit longer than before the end. Yin Xiaoxiao stretched out her hand and pinched a small slit with her fingers. It's okay to be a little wrong. Anyway, as long as you're by my side like this, I'm so happy and satisfied, but sometimes, I'm still a little greedy. Lin An hugged her, and in her exclamation, the two hugged and lay on the beach, beside the waves. The waves drifted past each other from time to time, and what they heard in their ears seemed to be the entire ocean. Greedy, it's nothing at all. I also like to be with you, hold you, listen to you, smell you. Lin An looked at her tenderly, exactly the same as her eyes. Besides, it was me who was wrong. Lin An hugged her and let her lie on top of her to avoid getting wet by the waves. Xiao Xiao is so cute and beautiful, so obedient and sensible, and her body is unexpectedly good. Lin watched her wriggling shyly. The most important thing is that he still likes me so much, treats me so well, it can even be said that it is connivance. I'm not an idiot, how could I not know how wronged you are? It's just that sometimes, I'm really too greedy, and I always think about the one who doesn't pull, and it's good to be able to grasp all the happiness. Lin closed his eyes. Sometimes I sink my heart and think about it, I seem to want to do a lot of things, but I don't know if I can do it well, I can only feel and cross the river by feeling the stones. You don't have to deliberately wrong yourself. If you feel that you want me to accompany you, just talk. If you feel that I have left you out, tell me too. If it really makes you sad, I can only say that I must be an unforgivable guy. Thank you for falling in love with my bad guy, little one. After Lin finished speaking, after a while, he suddenly felt a little cold on his face. He raised his head and saw Yin Xiaoxiao with his hands on the sand, looking at him on his face. What fell, cold, were her tears. She smiled softly, the black and white water mist in Peach Blossom's eyes gathered into water droplets, ticking down, the waves were clearer than the sound. I like you so much, bad guy. She lowered her head and took the initiative, just like she did on the Ferris wheel, sticking to Lin enthusiastically. The sound of breathing was drowned out by the sound of the waves. What you and Sister Zhang have done. She blushed and whispered in his ear, I want to try it too. Lin couldn't help looking straight. She had always been cute like a child. But now she looks like a peach blossom in full bloom, covering the whole world, and even the air seems to be more like summer. Under the moonlight, the waves crashed against the coast. I don't know whose clothes are scraps. I don't know why, just like this, they were brought up to the sea with the waves and drifted away. The sound of the waves is gone. The two stayed at the beach for a long time before they went back together in the shadow. The celebration is over, and the messy streets are left for tomorrow. Finally getting out of the tent in the command center, Lin had to face another problem. Zhang Qingshui looked at him and Yin Xiaoxiao coldly, and returned to her tent holding her mouth. Lu Yao stared at Lin with a look of disgust and resentment in his eyes, and went to another empty tent. Yin Xiaoxiao pondered for a while, smiled wickedly at Lin, lightly took a bite on his shoulder, and trotted to another empty tent. The three tents were all just concealed. Lin is in a dilemma. 10 seconds later, Yin Xiaoxiao suddenly stuck her head out of the tent and lip-mouthed him, bad guy. Then, he pulled up his tent and closed the door with a zipper from the inside. Okay. It becomes a choice. Lin smiled softly, it was hard to imagine that there would be a girl like Yin Xiaoxiao. He thought about it for a while, thinking about it, if he went to Zhang Qingshui, he probably wouldn't be able to get out. So, he took 2 steps towards Lu Yao, when Lu Yao's tent made a messy sound, and after a few seconds, she hurriedly tore her tent and locked it. Well, it seems that classmate Xiao Lu has started to worry about daily life again. That's fine. Lin turned his head and rushed in before Zhang Qingshui stretched out his hand to hold the tent. In her disgusting eyes, he hugged her and lay down. Humph. She made an inaudible noise, but it didn't drive him away. Just like stealing the bell, he also closed the door of the tent. It's full of little smells. Zhang Qingshui's voice was calm. Lin just smiled, hugged her and didn't speak. At this moment, Zhang Qingshui became puffed up like Yin Xiaoxiao, rest. No cultivation, rest together, she added another sentence. It's well known that Lin rarely sleeps, he's like a robot, sitting for an hour or two with his eyes closed, he'll be in good spirits. Lin nodded with a smile, a well-behaved look. Don't say it, Zhang Qingshui still eats this one. Seeing his guilty conscience, Xiao Yang's heart softened, he couldn't say anything, and he couldn't bear to be jealous. Really, yes. Only 1 day off, no, half a day. Just for a while, and after a while, I won't be able to find you. I foolishly thought you were shopping, and searched for it for a long time. She complained in a low voice, glancing at Yin Xiaoxiao next door from time to time. I'm not preventing you from going out, nor am I am not saying that you have to come and accompany me. It's just that you haven't talked to me much in the past few days. Before you go out, at least tell me. I don't know if you have any trouble or just going out to play. And I miss you too. Even Lin had to work hard to hear the voice of her last sentence. He smiled, hugged her tightly, and combed her long hair. Okay, I see. I didn't think about it. You have been busy for so long, and you must have missed me. You shouldn't be running around with Xiao Xiao to make you worry. It's not that you won't be allowed. Zhang Qingshui bit him depressed, but couldn't bite, but instead his teeth hurt. Then take you with me next time? Lin asked. 1, 2, together. Zhang Qingshui was stupid. Then, almost angrily, he found Meow Dao. Fortunately, Lin and added in time. Let's play together. Look at the sea, relax, you're tired too, aren't you? Oh. Zhang Qingshui calmed down for a while, then whispered, gritted her teeth, and said, okay. Lin and couldn't help laughing and stopped when she saw how depressed she was. Okay, sorry. He honestly admitted his mistake and didn't withdraw, who made him worry so much. When these days pass, when we arrive at Guzhou Island, we will be able to be together every day. The four of us, you can't tell when that time comes. If you watch too much, it will be annoying to see me. After Lin and finished speaking, Zhang Qingshui looked away. I know nonsense, how could I be like that? Anyway, I'm not forbidding you to go out, it's just. She was finally being honest. Zhang Qingshui bit his ear and said vaguely, can you take care of me first? Well, I'm the eldest wife. Silly girl, you don't understand. Men always prefer lil wives and new wives when it comes to wives. Lin didn't change his face. Okay, in the future, you should eat what you want to eat, and touch what you want to touch, even me, you have to eat first. Zhang Qingshui hurriedly shook his mouth. However, in the small room on the side, there was still an inaudible laughter. She was completely annoyed. Then Lin pulled her down and covered her mouth instead. Don't be late. I'm not shy to be heard. Facing this circumstances, how to solve it? Lin remembered a classic old saying she heard in her previous life. It seems that Zhang Ailing said it. The next morning, Lin went out. Simulations are naturally simulated every day, but without a particularly good idea, Lin can only aimlessly try his luck in the simulation, and sometimes obtain some intriguing information, but it is not yet time to explore. For example, there are a few simulations where he targets the ocean, and there are a few simulations where he tries to talk about the situation in each city, good and bad. But fortunately, Lin didn't die in these simulations. It seems that, to a certain extent, his strength has not been what it used to be. This is indeed the case. During this period, Lin has been getting stronger almost every day, developing various abilities and talents, and constantly finding more fresh uses. This makes him far more powerful than the self in his previous simulation. Lin, here. Yan Shi's voice came from a distance, she was still carrying the exaggerated sniper. Lin walked over and said with a smile, I didn't care to chat with you yesterday. How are you doing recently? Yan Shi grinned, exhaled a breath of smoke, and reached out to hammer his shoulder. Very good, I'm a lot stronger now. Then I'll take a good look at it later. Lin smiled, stretched out his hand, grabbed her big sniper, and waited a few times. After a few seconds, it was thrown to Yan Shi again. I've had a lot of experience with strengthening during this period of time. After that, you can bring it over when I'm idle, and I'll give your baby a good strengthening. Lin's words are solid. During this period of time, in addition to mainly exploring the plant controller's ability, he also studied a lot of equipment master's ability. It can be said that the effect of Lin's reinforcement now is stronger than the previous 2 times. The most important thing is that now that he understands the mechanism of reinforcement, the purpose of reinforcement is getting better and better. Before Lin just blindly increased the lethality of the Yan Shisho shotgun, but now, he can more easily provide it with more complex killing effects, including bursts, penetrations, etc., even bullets that don't need special qualities. For example, the leather jacket on Lin's body. The reason why he wears it all the time is because he uses this leather jacket as a tool to practice his hands when he is idle. After many times of strengthening, the strengthening effect on this thing has long been complicated and subtle, and even Lin who designed him occasionally forgets some small strengthening details. For example, what is waterproof, quick drying, accelerated, can enhance airflow during gliding flight, defense capability, fire resistance, low temperature resistance. Basically, this thing is thrown to ordinary people and can be used as a family heirloom. Even for an evolutionary, this jacket is definitely quite a powerful piece of equipment. No problem. Yan Shi only felt her eyes light up. She smiled and walked side by side with Lin, bumping him with her shoulder. Lin, yesterday I saw that little Zhang was looking for you all over the world, is there anything wrong? Hearing this, Lin just responded to her with the classic Dragon King smile. Now she is still lying down, what can happen? Hi. Yan Shi gave a thumbs up. Unconsciously, he left Lin half a meter away. Hey, you bastard. Lin scolded with a smile and walked to the tent in the command center. The people inside heard Lin's movements and took the initiative to greet him. 2 acquaintances, Lao Biao and Qin Biao, said with smiles, Lin, let's be polite and talk while walking. Lin nodded with a smile. Behind them, Zheng Li, who was originally indifferent, saw Lin and smiled brightly at him. Lin raised his brows, and his first reaction was to open the mind reader. Linen, long time no see. The sentiments she read made Linen feel bored, and this woman can be considered to have learned Liu Yao's method now. But Linen didn't care either, as long as he thought about it. This kind of unspoken voice couldn't cover up the human subconscious at all. For example, at the moment, his eyes are only exuding a faint golden light, and the mind reader and Tianyantong are almost at the same time. Leaving a deep impression on him like this may reverse his prejudice against me. After Lin understood her true thoughts, she just smiled and said hello to her alone. Zheng Li, long time no see, don't get me wrong. I have no prejudice against you, and I hope the cooperation will be pleasant in the future. Zheng Li smiled slightly, but then she smiled unabashedly. Okay, of course there is no problem. This is even better, I will definitely make him fall in love with me. After all, Lin is a man who cares. Lin looked back awkwardly. I really thought so. Oh. Yan Shi squeezed her chin, thoughtfully, and after a while, she asked in a low voice, what's the matter with you two? You didn't use it, and you made people hate it, right? Or, did you scum before the end of the world? Am I that kind of person? Lin looked serious and regretted. I didn't expect that in your eyes, I would be this kind of person. Yan Shi rolled her eyes, then laughed with Lin, speaking seriously. It's nothing, just a little problem, it has nothing to do with me. Lin said meaningfully, she is Xiaolu's friend. Yan Shi suddenly understood. Liu Yao, Zhang Qingshui honey. Zheng Li equals Liu Yao is surrounded by honey. Is this the corner of the fierce honey must be surrounded by honey? Is this the so-called mysterious principle that the same people always attract each other? Yan Shi thought about it for a while. After all, she was still a girl, and the heart of gossip was unavoidable. Zheng Li, you have only one task today, build a wall as much as possible, and make sure to build all the walls we need before the 20th. As soon as Lin's words came out, Zheng Li, who was just laughing and thinking about something, was stunned. Zheng Li chuckled lightly. Lin, I'm glad you can trust me so much, but, according to your idea, it would take dozens of kilometers to be surrounded by 4 walls, right? There are also restrictions on height and width. According to my ability, maybe it's not bad to be able to complete 1 kilometer a day. After all, I can't fool you with appearances. With a wave of Zheng Li's hand, the soil on the ground suddenly twisted like waves. She condensed a flower and crushed it casually. If you really are all counting on me, then we will be in big trouble. Of course not. A black light tail suddenly appeared behind Lin, and before the clod fell, he caught the clod and sent it to his hand. Crushing the clod, Lin smiled. What if you just want a wall of this quality? This kind of quality. Zheng Li smiled and shook his head. That's simple, after all, it's just a simple pile of dirt. It's just the soil in this form. Without my maintenance, it probably won't be able to maintain its shape when the wind blows. If you are at your height, it will probably fall when the wind blows. Zheng Li is still very sincere when she speaks. This is related to many people, the most important thing is her own life. She doesn't want to die now, she has to do a lot of things. Lin just smiled. You just build the wall, I will do the stable things. Zheng Li smiled. It seems that I underestimated you again, and yes, you are not like a naive person like Liu Yao. If you are not sure, you will definitely not speak. It's my fault, it seems that I have to trust you more in the future. The tone of her words all meant that she wanted to get close to Lin. Lin is just a tool person with no emotion at this moment. You're welcome, let's work. The group walked to the preset city wall location. Zheng Li stretched out his hand and took a deep breath. I'm going to start talking. From now on, all the earth walls of built will be broken when touched, so don't get too close. As soon as these words came out, without Lin saying anything, Yuan Long and the others who followed behind all stepped back in unison. They are not evolutionaries. Lin threw up a few vine branches that looked like they were broken. You can block it. Bang. There was a sudden muffled sound on the ground. Then, like an earthquake, the ground in front of Lin suddenly rose, and the surrounding soil was absorbed, and countless originally solid soils seemed to be transformed into plasticine in the hands of children. As Zheng Li carefully gestured her palm, the earth wall continued to deform. When it reached a width of almost 3 meters, she pointed upwards, and the earth wall continued to grow upward. Using the word growth should be the most appropriate, because this earth wall really seems to have life, and it is constantly climbing and spreading, as if it is flowing. 3 meters, 4 meters, corn, 6 meters, 7 meters. When they reached a height of 7 meters, several people standing under the wall couldn't help but raised their heads, and those ordinary people were even more stunned and amazed. So, if you can strengthen it, do it as soon as possible. I will start to stretch. The longer the wall is, the worse my control will be. Once it exceeds my ability, it will only collapse. Zheng Li looked relaxed. After all, it has been awakened for many days, and this kind of wall is just a look, like holding a group of kings. Lin and just took a random draw. A broken branch of a vineman fell to the ground. Motivated by his spiritual power, this vine man quickly began to soar. Huh. Zheng Li was a little surprised. She was in control of the soil and naturally knew what was happening in the soil at the moment. She looked at Lin and with admiration and praised her heartily. As expected of you, you are truly a genius to come up with such a method and have such an ability. Lin and couldn't help laughing. You don't forget to blow me all the time. Dad? What are you talking about? She blinked, and Lin and noticed that this woman still had the heart to put on makeup and her eyelashes were painted. Not to mention, compared to most of the survivors who are facing the sky at the moment, she looks more unique and charming. But it is also, how can a woman who can become friends and rivals with Liu Yao, and also covet an excellent man like Lin, can go wrong? Cough cough. Lin just ended the conversation with two voices. Stretch it out. He simply ordered. Zheng Li laughed softly, and with a wave of her hand, the wall began to spread to both sides. Countless soils surged from the surroundings, and many places seemed to be obviously dented by more than 10 centimeters. Lin just moved with her earthen wall, seemingly doing nothing. But when Lin walked past, thorns and vines suddenly grew out of those earthen walls. These thorns and vines grow wildly in the land, and while the roots are fixing the soil, they also make the soil wall and the ground nailed into one. Numerous vines are intertwined, like hemp ropes, while fixing the soil, they also fix the wall firmly on the ground, linking it with the vast ground. Originally, it was just loose soil, which was constantly praised, and even as the plants continued to grow, it seemed to be a little shorter. 10 meters, 100 meters. After walking more than 500 meters, a 500-meter high wall suddenly appeared. Zheng Li breathed a sigh of relief and waved his hand. I will rest for half an hour. Lin just looked at her with a dangerous smile. It won't take that long. I will pay you in advance now. With it, you can not only become stronger and faster, but also recover faster. A swirl of spiritual energy fell on her. After that, Lin also took out a small blue bottle like oral liquid. Come on. This is a small blue medicine made by Yin Xiaoxiao. You drink it to speed up the return to blue. Zheng Li's mouth twitched slightly. Ah. Thank you. So, just 10 minutes later, she had to stand up again and start building the wall. Every 500 meters or so, she had to stop and rest for a while, but Lin always took out a small blue bottle at the right time to encourage her to continue working. This even if the mental strength will recover, the fatigue will not disappear. Zheng Li suddenly had some doubts. Lin, is this guy capable of building walls by himself, but he has to wait for himself to come? Intentional? Lin still smiles. Bad woman, want to soak me? How can there be no price? Come. Drink this bottle of blueberry-flavored little blue medicine. Today, we are not allowed to go without jumping off. In the shocked, astonished eyes of a group of people, a towering giant wall was born and spread outside the gathering place, becoming a reassuring barrier. Just one day. A wall of more than 7 kilometers has been completed. Lin clapped his hands. His voice seemed to have a hint of ridicule in his smile. Continue tomorrow. The speed of building the wall is too slow today. It only takes 10 minutes to rest. Don't be lazy, Zheng Li. I hate that kind of girl who doesn't have perseverance the most. Zheng Li gasped, sat down without getting up, looked at Lin and smiled instead of anger, but there was a dazzling light and fighting spirit in his eyes as if he had seen something interesting. She reluctantly got up and had to rely on Yan Shi for help. Then tomorrow, I will wait for you. Zheng Li stared at Lin and, even though she was exhausted, she still smiled gracefully. Lin didn't back down. Okay. Well, it still seems to have strength. Softened. Let her build a wall of at least 10 kilometers tomorrow. Should be enough, right? Time flickered and it was the 22nd. At this moment, dawn. The sanctuary looks nothing like it used to be. 4 tall walls shrouded the sanctuary. Some depression, but more of a reassuring sense of security. The gates are all pulled up, and when they need to be closed, through the winch, or directly cut the rope, the huge earth gate will fall down and completely seal the wall, which can be said to be a retro craft. But, it works. Especially in the face of zombies. Lin is also more leisurely. What he does most every day is to study mutant plants, then cast a wide net and throw them out. At this moment, outside the sanctuary, it is no longer a bare wilderness. Instead, it is surrounded by forests, and there are all kinds of strange plants everywhere. Some trees look incomparably tall, with only 2 branches on their bodies, like arms, and at the ends are huge brown fruits. The fruits are as strong as stones. If they find an enemy, they can be used to slap them. Strange. There are also giant flowers with sunflower heads, or vines that move like snakes. Overall, this thing looks weirder and scarier than the average zombie. No way, many semi-finished products can actually be used. However, the biggest discoveries and gains in the past few days are not these. It was the black light thrown into the sea by Lin En. Black light has been swimming continuously in the ocean these few days, starting with a carp, and devouring evolution little by little. In almost only one day, it had a body size of 3 or 4 meters in the sea. After that, it was almost all the way from the sea to the deep sea. However, the further you go to the deep sea, the greater the resistance the black light encounters. Originally, it was just over half a meter long. At this moment, all of them are 7 or 8 meters in size. Lin En once witnessed a terrifying mutant giant whale, whose size even reached a terrifying kilometer. With only one breath, countless fish are sucked into it. Even, the whale can control the water flow. Haiguang originally wanted to try to eat it, but he was suddenly blown into the sky by a huge wave. After it fell, the big figure of the whale disappeared. In addition, there are actually many murlocs in the deep sea. Not only did these murlocs look smarter than the murlocs Lin En had seen, but, more importantly, their fighting abilities were greatly improved. There is also a sturdy murloc with a body size of 2 or 3 meters. Like the mutant zombies, it has various magical abilities. There is even one that can release high voltage current, and even the black light is injured. But fortunately, after constantly swallowing, the black light has also made great progress. It's just that as the black light gets farther and farther away from Lin En, the quality of the black light itself becomes larger and larger, and it becomes more and more difficult for Lin En to control. Lin En decided to recover part of it in advance, so he ordered the black light to return, and it would take only 1 day to return to himself. The corpse tide is approaching. He must make himself as strong as possible before this, increase his confidence, save one more person and save one person from death, which is a good thing. And today, unsurprisingly, is the time when the corpse tide began to change. Lin En, call. At noon, Lin En was thinking about a mutated plant with a long-range attack outside the tent. Yin's small voice came from the back, and Lin En took it. It was a call from the institute. The head of the research institute, Guan Hong, said in a serious voice, Lin En, our satellite has detected the movement of the corpse group. You're right. Maybe, a corpse tide is really going to form. His voice was still calm, but Lin En could hear it, the subtle trembling that even Guan Hong didn't realize. Understood, we have prepared quite well here. After Lin En finished speaking, Guan Hong sighed. This is okay. After all, we should have the most various weapons and equipment here, and the weapons with large yields are also preset, and they can be used when necessary. You also pay more attention. If there is news, I will tell you by phone in time. Guan Hong paused for a while, and then said, there is also good news. Our simplified potion can already reach a daily output of 1,000. Although it can't be said that the output is very large, there may be better technological breakthroughs in the future. We decided after discussion and left a part to give to you as a priority. As soon as these words came out, Lin En couldn't help but be taken aback. What about you? Lin En calculated. According to Guan Hong's statement, the current output is far from enough. 1,000 simplified evolution potions, even if they use 800 by themselves, they can only be used by 5,000 people in a month. Now, there are at least tens of thousands of people in the Qianlong refuge at the research institute, or even more. Lin En frowned. Don't worry, we are optimistic about an increase in production, maybe soon to 5,000 to 10,000 a day. The only thing to worry about is the raw material problem. We lack enough mutant animals. Especially, when the corpse tide arrives, many mutant animals will probably be eaten by the corpse tide, and we will have less material by then. I'm calling you, and I want to ask you, do you have any good suggestions in this regard? Lin En's head turned rapidly, and finally, a sudden light flashed in his mind, since this event was not deliberately displayed in the simulation. That means the problem is solved well. Is it enough to rely on those mutant animals of Simba the lion? What are the main materials for your research and development of medicines? Lin En asked. Blood, the blood of living mutant animals, Guan Hong said. Lin En immediately made a decision. Then it's not a big problem. When the corpse tide passes, we will start the route immediately. I will cover the transport plane with mutant animals, and you will directly move the research institute. Moved. Guan Hong was momentarily stunned by Lin En's thoughts. But Lin En said more and more and felt more feasible. We are safe enough here, the raw materials are abundant, and I can also guarantee the flight route. I can guarantee the safety of shipping. Isn't this a mess? Lin En didn't say this on a whim. In fact, he saw the feasibility of this thing in the previous simulation. At present, he has simulated until more than October 20th. During this process, he has successfully used the Lion King to fly animals in the simulator to ensure the safety of the route. During this period, Linen has begun to gradually attract talents and equipment to Guizhou Island. In the simulator, this happened in October, but Linen believes that this can be done better and faster than in the simulator. Guan Hong was silent and seemed to be thinking about this. He gritted his teeth and finally said, I see, we will discuss it, but there is a high probability that it is impossible to move all of them. We'll also take into account the thoughts of the people at Qianlong Refuge. You know, if we all go, they'll probably be. If Guan Hong points to anything. Then, he asked again, can you find a suitable airport in such a short period of time? No problem. Even if there is no suitable one, it is fine to create a suitable one. Linen said decisively. Guan Hong also firmed up. Then I know, I will try to advance this matter. If it's possible to bring these devices to you, as well as our researchers. Perhaps, for us, this is the best choice. Linen was startled. How about you? In fact, he still has a good impression of Guan Hong. This vigorous and resolute person in charge is decisive and capable, and is a true genius. Guan Hong just smiled. What should I do if I leave the Qianlong Refuge? We have to find a way to fight it. Even if we survive this disaster, we have to find a way to take them to survive the nuclear explosion. Linen was silent for a moment. Okay, I see, keep in touch at any time, and finalize this matter as soon as possible. After a few more words, he hung up the phone. Yin Xiaoxiao looked around. Zhang Qingshui was very busy these days. As the deputy head of security, she followed Cheng Peng almost every day to check defense facilities and traps, repeatedly confirming them, then checking for deficiencies in making up for leaks, and perfecting the plan. And Lu Yao also followed. I don't know why, Linen guessed. Maybe it was because of Zheng Li. She was worried that this woman would even rob her best friend. On the contrary, it was Yin Xiaoxiao. After Linen stepped down from the position of acting director of the shelter, he began to fish for fish, euphemistically saying, I'm just taking a break from my busy schedule, and I can't learn anything from repetitive work. I'll go over. Then try to stick to him. Linen doesn't dislike it, and she does as she said. There are many trivial things in logistics management. Even if you master it, you have to grind it slowly, boring calculations and overall planning. Compared with these, she wanted to stick to Linen more, and always felt that if Linen left her to manage the logistics alone, she would not have time to stick to him if she was on Lonely Island. Well, Linen just felt that she just wanted to stick to herself a little more after a breakthrough in her relationship, which was understandable. What's the matter? After he hung up the phone, Yin Xiaoxiao gently hugged him from behind, almost let Linen carry him, and hung up the whole person. Linen shook his head. It's nothing, everything is normal. Oh, she didn't really care about it, Linen could solve it anyway. Linen dotingly turned his head to stick to her slightly hot face. You fish all morning, and Wenshan doesn't say anything about you. Linen teased. Yin Xiaoxiao chuckled lightly. I'm not slacking off either. It's also very laborious to use my abilities to conjure up what he needs. I just came to see you during the break, what's the point? She rubbed her face against Lin En's neck like a kitten, and some sweet smell penetrated into Lin En's nose. Okay, I see. What about your equipment? Bring it here, I'll strengthen it again. Lin En just smiled and asked her to bring the equipment. No need, you haven't rested a lot these days. After you've studied the plants, you will strengthen the equipment for us. Isn't this all-consuming mental power? Yin Xiaoxiao said softly, I've also worked hard to become stronger. I've learned a lot from Sister Yanxi these days, so don't worry about me so much. According to Sister Yanxi, I'm also an excellent fighter. You have to call her sister, and I'll be called Lin En all day. Lin En squinted at her. Yin Xiaoxiao smiled sweetly, and whispered in a sweeter voice than her smile, brother. Lin En didn't know why, but when she heard her call her brother, she suddenly felt her heart pounding, and the words she said seemed to have magic power. Lin En, Lao Yuan is looking for you. Hearing Yanxi's voice, Lin En turned his head, someone was there, and Yin Xiaoxiao was embarrassed to be coquettish with him, stood up, said hello, and ran back to the logistics department to find Wenshan to work. Yanxi looked at him with a smile on his face. Let's go. Lin En got up, hummed, and said, it's what I said before, have you found it? Yanxi turned serious. Yes, I found it. Lin En and her walked quickly to the big tent that is currently serving as the office, and as soon as they entered, everyone inside was frowning. Lin En, come and see. Yuan Long got up without being polite, but directly pasted a printed text on the whiteboard. In the text on the whiteboard, many words were written densely. Lin En stepped forward, thoughtfully. The content of the text is not complicated. However, it is enough to make ordinary people feel enormous pressure. At present, it is known that most of the mutants have left their original positions, and we found that a large number of mutants are distributed in 2 to 3 areas, specific locations. They seem to be consciously avoiding the observation of our satellites, but we still find. The nuclear bomb strike failed. They seemed to realize the danger in advance and began to lurk, after we continued to observe. Lin and read it carefully. Then, his brows wrinkled slightly. What he was worried about still happened, among the mutants. There really is a mutant similar to the awakened, precognition ability. About this mutant, let's start with Lin An's previous simulations. Almost 3 or 5 days ago, Lin An basically kept trial and error in the simulation, trying to find the silhouette of mutants or mutants. If you can find the location of the leader of the other party before the corpse tide arrives, and use the only nuclear bombs that the research institute currently has, you may be able to surprise them and directly hit them in the face. Anyway, sooner or later, they will face mutation and radiation, so it is better to find their figures and give this group of monsters a pot in advance. Without the leader, the remaining zombies and mutants, even if they will evolve a few powerful ones, are definitely far less capable than these geniuses. The main purpose is to find out their identities and abilities, and try to find a way to solve them. However, the mastermind behind the mutant zombies was not found, but Lin An made a lot of discoveries on the mutant side. Just as he had wondered before, why did the mutants choose to stand up collectively without hesitation, neither attacking the human beings in a big way, nor taking advantage of the corpse tide to fish in the muddy waters? Where did they go to hide? Why did they hide, and why did they decide to cover up? This is what Lin An has been curious about, and has not gotten an answer in the simulator. However, in the simulation a few days ago, Lin An relied on his tyrannical strength every time, and now it has been strengthened to a motorcycle that can be called a landplane, wandering around the map. Finally, he caught some clues. Found the movement of the group of mutant zombies. They even hid in the mountains. Not only to avoid zombies, but also to avoid humans. After locking the approximate area, Lin An let the 2 shelters with satellites start a targeted search at the end of the simulation. However, in several simulations, Lin An found strangely that whenever he was ready to launch a nuclear bomb on this group of mutants, these mutant zombies seemed to be prepared. Not to mention dispersing in advance, their own intelligence is not low, and most of them are of human size, and their abilities are strange. Once they found the signs that Lin An was going to make them nucleate, even the satellites couldn't find the shadows at all, and they just disappeared. It can be said that it was a complete failure. Lin An had to suspect that among them, it is very likely that some mutants had awakened abilities similar to foreknowledge. Of course, that group of mutants couldn't predict everything in the same way as his simulator. Probably, it could only be a very powerful early warning of the dangerous aircraft. Therefore, Lin An conducted an experiment in reality. Among the mutant groups, they probably gathered in 2 or 3 places. In reality, Sigong Refuge, which has nuclear strike capability, tried to target the opponent's location many times, and at the same time, observed the movements according to satellites. Trying to see clues in the movement of that group of mutants. No way, the simulator's information is too brief, and sometimes it just keeps popping up one question after another in Lin An's mind. It is necessary to combine the actual situation to make an accurate judgment. In fact, Lin An couldn't help frowning. The good news is that those mutants are not able to fully predict the future, but a powerful early warning of danger. When Lin An directed the nuclear bombs at them, they were not ready to launch at all. They sensed the danger and began to hide. The bad news is that these things are real dogs, and the satellites will soon be unable to find them, and they can only be roughly judged from scattered signs of activity that they are still hiding in the mountains. It seemed that they could not judge what gave them such a strong sense of crisis, otherwise they would have found trouble in the Yugong refuge. It seems that, at most, it is a vague sense. Lin An didn't want to try any more. It was too serious to scare the snakes, and it was very likely that they would be broken into pieces and put up again, which would be difficult to find. But it is not without gain. Judging that this is not a complete prophecy, or that the mutant has not been able to exercise his ability into a prophecy. Lin An made a decision. He must kill this mutant. The sooner the better. You must know that the biggest reliance on Lin An's safe journey to the present is actually the simulation function of the simulator. Being able to predict the future makes him invincible. No matter how many dangers, he will not stop him, because he can find a path that will surely succeed. But if the opponent also has such ability, then the 2 of them become chess. Start wrapping the puff pastry. I guess you're on the 1st floor, it turns out you guessed I'm on the 1st floor so I'm on the 2nd floor, and then you find out I'm on the 2nd floor. This nesting doll will only make Lin An waste a lot of time. So, what is Lin An's current advantage? Lin An thought about it. In the end there is only one. That is that he simulates longer days and the results are more detailed. The premonition of the crisis is bound to be limited, and it cannot be just a random threat that can make all mutants succumb. They also need food and need to evolve, so that gave Lin a chance. You can predict the danger in 10 days, 20 days later. But I look farther. If the other party perceives the danger, the targeted preparations are made. Perhaps instead, they can use the other party's vague sensing ability and in turn set the other party's trap. Lin looked at the information assembled on the whiteboard in front of him and read it over and over several times. Then, nod. I know, that's it, you don't need to care about this for the time being, leave it to me. Lin glanced at the worried people and just smiled. Rather than worrying about those things, it's better to be concerned about the corpse tied in front of you. Even if I'm pretty sure I'll get through it, remember, it's not going to be easy. I just hope that, even if it's just to save one person from dying, we will do our best not to be too nervous, but not too relaxed. Lin warned a few times and looked at the expressions of the people around him. Suddenly he laughed. He turned his head and looked at a man standing quietly in the corner. His eyes were both excited and adoring. The man took off his glasses at this moment, and he seemed to have grown taller, and his muscles seemed to have grown stronger in just a few days. Li Jung, your awakening ability is very interesting. This is a good opportunity. Maybe you can get a lot of improvement in this battle, you have to work hard. Lin encouraged him. Li Jung stood upright excitedly. Yes. He was the man with glasses who was rescued by Lin in the supermarket in the small county town at the very beginning. Even Lin already knew in the simulator that he would wake up. However, he never thought that the key to this guy's ability to awaken, including his ability to awaken, was related to himself. Don't worry, brother Lin, I will definitely become as strong as you, Li Jung said loudly, clenching his fists tightly. His ability to awaken is total imitation. This is a very interesting ability. Li Jung can copy the ability of other creatures and achieve complete imitation. It's just that the object of imitation cannot be much stronger than him, and it can only imitate the moves he has seen. But even so, his ability is still extremely powerful, just because of one thing, he can really do a complete simulation. If someone has 3 heads and 6 arms, as long as he can simulate successfully, he can also grow 3 heads and 6 arms. He even tried to imitate the mutant animals, and he was able to completely transform into an animal form exactly like the other party. It just looks exactly like himself, and it looks a little scary. For example, the object he imitated before was hairy, but after imitating it, he turned into a big dog with a human face. Not to mention how speechless it is. I heard that there were survivors who were so frightened by him that they fainted first, and vomited for a long time after waking up. Compared to a complete simulation, it is simply a transformation technique. But Li Jung insisted that his ability was a simulation. Just because he felt that he could awaken such an ability was because he had longed to be as powerful as Lin before. The reason why he awakened such an ability must be to be as powerful as Lin in one day. Then you have worked hard, Lin said with a smile. Even if Li Jung's ability is conceptually strong, it's outrageous, but to be honest, if you want to imitate him, you really don't know how strong Li Jung's ability is. For example, black light, it really imitates a black light, and it is completely an inferior parasitic body similar to black light. If Li Zhengjun can completely simulate the black light, it will be even worse, he may have sent it himself. Black light doesn't mean you can control it if you want. Let alone other abilities. Li Jung's premise to imitate Lin is almost equivalent to imitating the ability of 10 evolutionaries at the same time. And Li Jung can't selectively simulate, but can only copy completely. All I can say is that the future is bright. As for how far in the future, it probably depends on when Lin decides to lie down. I will definitely work hard. Li Jung's face was serious. He took off his glasses at the moment, and he looked like he had thick eyebrows and big eyes, which suddenly gave Lin a sense of sight. Give this guy a watermelon head look and he's wearing green. Well, Xiao Li, I will call you that from now on. Okay, don't say it, I may really need you somewhere. Lin suddenly had an idea, but it was not perfect, and he needed to wait for him to go back to the simulation before making a conclusion. Li Jung heard that Lin asked him to do something. Not only did he not feel pressure, but only felt a feeling of excitement. Okay. I'm always ready, you can call me, you can do anything. Lin nodded, patted his shoulder, and walked out with a smile. Leaving the tent, Lin frowned slightly and walked back to his tent position quickly. Time is running out. To be precise, in the simulator, he already knew. 6 days later, the corpse tide will come. And the day after tomorrow, probably the day when the Lion King will come to N City because he senses the movement of the corpse tide. Lin needs some preparation. It can be said that this preparation is a bit ill-intentioned. The original Lin only thought of a simple alliance. To have a group of mutant animals to help you, whether it is to resist the corpse tide, or resist mutants, or other dangers, will be of great benefit. You can even use the Lion King to manage a group of low-level mutant animals, which are kept in captivity and used as meat reserves. Lin didn't think the Lion King would resist this point. The reason why he commanded so many animals was just for himself. In essence, the mutant animals were the least united group. After all, how could a lion possibly consider an antelope as its own kind? The weak eat the strong, and the strong is king. As long as it can be given some benefits, or only needs to show stronger strength than him, it will never object to using a handful of weak mutant animals as a gift to Lin. Just as it did not hesitate to present several giant eagles to Lin, and even broke the spiritual link to Lin. For Wang, most of the ordinary mutant animals are just subordinates or consumables, or even reserves. Lin can even be sure that human beings are actually the same to the Lion King. It is only because Lin gives him a strong sense of threat that he is willing to show his rational side. But now, Lin is not satisfied with the alliance. In other words, he was a little dissatisfied with waiting to tear his face with the Lion King in the future. He wants to have all the power in his hands as soon as possible. The mental power network is not only a means of controlling animals, but also a means of enhancing one's own mental power. As long as the Lion King and other tyrannical mutant animals can be captured by his own spiritual network, Lin can continuously enjoy the spiritual power provided by them and grow faster. In addition, the key reason why Lin decided to start early was the mutants. For some guesswork and ideas, Lin needs to possess the ability to fully control these mutant animals. A tough fight. Lin narrowed his eyes and pondered for a moment, his fingers moved slightly, and in his mental power perception, the black light that was rushing back from the deep sea was even faster. Want to fight? Can hit? Can you win? The odds are high. Lin made a decision after just a few thoughts. Mock it up tonight. If it can be done. Then the Lion King came to the end domain on the way. Stop it early. If it's willing to surrender, good thing. If you don't want to, then let's play a game. Lin wiped his fists and took out a huge seedling knife that had turned completely black from his tent. He waved freely. Meow Dao immediately set off a gust of wind. Haven't fought for a while. At this moment, Lin actually had a sense of anticipation, longing for a happy battle. The black light in the body seemed to be excited because of this. No, to be precise, because the cells that lived in Lin's martial god, that symbiotically lived with it seemed to be excited in anticipation. Maybe this time, I should also pay more attention to myself, who seems to have the least effect at present, the talent of the god of martial arts? Lin thoughtfully narrowed his eyes. Meow Dao did not reflect the slightest light in the sunlight. I hope that the strength of the Lion King will not let him down. The morning of September 24th. To be precise, it was the night that just passed on September 23rd. Lin stood alone by the sea. The moon tonight is not clear, the thick dark clouds cover the sky, the wind blows the waves, and the night never stops slapping the coast, as if a stormy sea is brewing. In the distance, a huge shadow swam from where the sea and the sky meet, and sometimes there was a little dark black on the sea. Whoa! Getting closer, there was the faint sound of a huge paddling under the sea. Lin just stood quietly, looking at the shadow with a soft smile. He seemed to be able to feel the black light coming from a distance, and he instinctively showed a touch of kindness to him, as if he couldn't wait, and wanted to reintegrate with the black light in his body. Instinct or consciousness? Lin didn't know, but luckily, as the distance got closer, his perception and control of the black light became stronger and stronger. When the huge black shadow was close to the coast, the depth of only a few meters could no longer accommodate the black light. The arrival of the black light. The huge black light turned into a shark-like existence at the moment, and when it landed on the shoal, it rushed and turned into a pool of black ooze. These oozes scattered into small fishes one after another, swam towards him quickly, and after rushing out of the sea, they turned into small black snakes one after another. Swimming, impatiently, pounced towards him. Lin kept his hands in his pockets unchanged, but behind him, two black light tails poked towards them. Then, like two lumps of silt coming together, the black ink like black light disappeared on Lin's tail. The black light tail is like a snake swallowing food, bulging in a circle from time to time, constantly sending the black light back. Lin only felt that he was suddenly holding up a little bit, his brows were wrinkled, and behind him, a number of black light tails swayed out. The overwhelming black light that leapt towards him gave him several more options. At this moment, Lin was like breathing the exhaust gas in the deep sea by the sea, and countless black lights were sucked in front of him like gas. Lin closed his eyes and could only feel the power of black light coming from his body constantly, and the countless energy even made him feel nauseous in an instant. After all, the amount of energy Lin can absorb at this moment is limited. Unless it can directly act on the other side, most of it is actually lost. Haiguang instinctively sensed this, and it started to work actively, like a diligent tinkerer, desperately grasping all the energy that could be captured, consolidating itself, and constantly trying to feed Linen. Linen bowed his head. He had not gained weight for a while, and even after getting used to it, his body that was already lightly lifted, actually sank a little on the beach. The black light finally achieved a qualitative change in the continuous filling. Perhaps it was because the separated black light devoured some special creature in the deep sea, so that the black light finally completed some puzzle pieces. It couldn't wait, it turned into a huge black cocoon and surrounded Linen. At this moment, under the moonlight, it was as if a giant black cocoon was hatching something, very rhythmically, as if the heartbeat was pulsing gently. Time passed little by little. On the coastline, the stars disappeared, replaced by a sparse rain. The gust of wind began to roar, wrapping raindrops and hitting the ground. The sound of rain was endless, but when it fell on the giant cocoon, the sound of water droplets did not even sound. Instead, it was like falling into sand, absorbed away. The sun struggled to stream a few dim beams from the dark clouds. The giant cocoon made a coughing sound. As if mechanically deformed, these black lines continued to spread distinctly, covering almost half of the beach. Then, countless sharp thorns suddenly exploded from the beach. Linen got down on one knee and slowly got up with his knees. Until this moment, his face was covered with black lines. These lines kept swimming, and after a few seconds, they finally disappeared. Linen just stretched out his hand and looked at his palm. Then, use it anywhere. A huge long blade suddenly appeared, like a shark's fin-like shape, with a savage coldness. When Linen closed his hand, a pair of huge wings suddenly appeared behind him. Different from the simple imitation before, at this moment, Linen's wings, black light and even feathers are vividly portrayed. These flowing black lights are red in the black. The wings fluttered violently. The huge force instantly made the beach full of flying sand. You must know that these sands are still being hit by the rain at the moment. And Linen jumped directly into the sky. Only at this moment did the fully unfolded wings appear as they should. The length was exaggerated to the point of 7 or 8 meters long on one side. After the wings were stretched out, Linen even looked a little small. It was as if the wings of a western dragon had been placed on the back of a human. In the weirdness, it gives people a very terrifying sense of suppression. Linen stopped in the air, and he only needed to flap his wings from time to time to keep him still. The progress is really not small. Linen sighed, but not only because black light had entered the next stage at this moment, and was far stronger than any kind of black light's combat performance he knew. It is also because, in the process of evolution, his physical quality has also begun to soar. Compared to black light, his progress seemed to be limited, but Linen knew that he was just not fully activated at the moment. That huge force was hidden in his cells, waiting to be tapped. All it takes is a hearty battle, and these because cells will unleash their full power. Take Linen to the next level. So, how to do it? Linen just looked calm and looked into the distance. A little golden light came quickly, and a small golden bird appeared in front of him, but because of the great pressure, he shivered and did not dare to approach. Mental force returned what it wanted to say. The Lion King was on his way yesterday. Linen smiled slightly. Well done. With a flutter of his wings, a gust of wind blew up. At their speed, they will be able to reach the vicinity of City N by almost this evening. It's a little troublesome to fight near the gathering place. It seems that we still have to try our best to stop them outside. As if the black light disappeared from the sky, Linen flew towards the direction of the shelter. The safest thing is to let Zhang Qingshui and the others follow. No matter how confident Linen is, he will never take risks alone. What's more, he doesn't need a group of dead animals. It is easier to conquer it if there are some people who can make the Lion King realize the gap. The wings swept across the sky, the rain still did not stop, and the wind was getting stronger and stronger. Linen's wings can not only be used for flying, but under the constant change of black light, it can even use wind, inertia, and gliding force to continuously increase the speed. Boom. Several gunshots rang out from under his feet. Linen did not dodge or evade. Those bullets landed on him, and wherever they hit, they could only make a clanging sound. He stretched out his hand. A bullet hit the palm of his hand, black lines flashed across the palm of his hand, and the bullet hit and fell, and he did everything as usual. Don't get excited, he said. A few soldiers then hurriedly put away their weapons, and the cold sweat fell on their faces. Director Lin, I'm sorry, we didn't realize that you didn't show this ability before, One hurriedly explained. Linen just smiled. I don't blame you, you made a very correct decision. The next time you encounter a UFO, if you don't get the news, you have to fight. He patted the soldier's shoulder casually. The sudden increase in strength did not affect his control at all, and the martial arts talent quickly coordinated with him to become familiar with his strength almost at the moment when his strength increased sharply. At this moment, the state of lifting weights was restored. Okay, don't think too much, keep working, I'll go first. Lin An smiled and didn't wait for them to reply. The next moment, he disappeared suddenly. Boom. After he disappeared, the sound of a heavy stomping on the ground suddenly sounded, and a few soldiers almost lost their fire. Looking from a distance, they saw his back galloping away. He was so fast when he started, as if he was teleporting. Even, the speed of disappearing is faster than the sound in an instant. Lin An ran happily and didn't slow down until he got to the tower. It seemed that he only took a minute or two to get to the distance of 5 or 6 kilometers from the outermost guard point. The soldiers on the city wall saw Lin An clearly and heaved a sigh of relief. There is no other reason. Lin An's attitude when he rushed towards him was like an unstoppable missile. The next moment he was still far away, and the next moment he seemed to be approaching, and he couldn't see who it was. If the clothes on his body were not too recognizable, everyone would have shouted. Lin An simply said hello and went to find someone non-stop. Half an hour later, a motorcycle team rumbled out of the high wall. Zhang Qingshui, Zheng Li, Chang Peng, Yan Shi, Qi Tian, and Li Zheng were brought out by Lin An. The rest were Yin Xiaoxiao, Liu Yao, and a few evolutionaries that Lin An was not familiar with. Base. Under the leadership of the Rat King, the group of rats had already rushed out of their nests, set up an ambush ahead of schedule, and set up an ambush. Breaking through the rain, the speed of the motorcycle on the road is extremely fast. At this moment, everyone is an evolutionary, and the minimum speed can be controlled more than 200. If Lin An didn't take care of others, at this moment, his motorcycle, which has been strengthened many times, can even drive at a speed of more than 400 or 500 miles on a road with fairly good road conditions. When the plane took off. After leaving the city, Lin An estimated the distance and signaled to stop. Are you going to intercept them right here? Yan Shi looked left and right, only to feel that the surrounding horses were flat, but they were all flat, not suitable for ambush at all. You keep a good distance, don't get close, I didn't make a sound, or if they didn't take the initiative to attack you, you don't have to do it. Your purpose is to let them throw the mouse, so as not to give birth to some unwanted thoughts. As long as the Lion King honestly accepts my duel, even if he brings his subordinates to beat me together, it doesn't matter. Lin An drew it casually, and the black Miao Dao, which was bound by the black light behind his back, was held in his hand. The people behind them looked at each other and hummed. At this moment, many of the people behind Lin An had never seen Lin An make a full effort. For example, Qi Tian and Chang Peng had never seen Wang at all. Although everyone was a little curious, they kept quiet when they saw Lin An sitting on the locomotive and looking into the distance without saying a word. Without waiting, just half an hour later, in the distance, a large black spot suddenly rushed towards here. In the sky, a golden giant eagle neighed and circled, calling out to Lin An alertly. Lin An, what are you doing? As one of the strongest helpers under the Lion King, Jin Yu can sense that the comers are not good. And Lin An just smiled. I have some suggestions, I want to talk to Simba face to face. We came here after believing your proposal, human beings, perfidy is not a good thing. Jin Yu screamed anxiously. Why don't you wait for Simba to come, let's talk together, how about it? Lin An was still smiling. Jin Yu circled back and forth, those eyes were fixed on Lin An, and it seemed that he would pounce at any moment. But in the end, it flew into the air with a swish and returned to the herd. Wang Simba cautiously kept a certain distance, and when he reached a distance of about 1 kilometer in front of Lin An, he let out a roar. Lin An, what do you want to do? Simba knows, Lin An understands. Lin An just signaled to the people behind him to wait in place, and walked forward alone. Simba hesitated for a while, but did not show weakness, and also stepped forward, the gorilla Silverback by his side followed closely. Jin Yu didn't land, and was still hovering above Lin An. Lin An looked at Simba with a very calm tone. Simba, the friendly intentions of my alliance have never changed. It's just the so-called alliance, and there should be a division between the leader and the members. I've been thinking about it, and I always feel that if you and I can't work together, we'll only get twice the result with half the effort. After Lin An finished speaking, Simba narrowed his eyes. It felt that the person in front of him seemed to be more dangerous than the last time he felt it. No, it's not just danger, but a sense of oppression that makes it vaguely suffocated. What the hell do you want? After Simba's huge body, 3 snake-like tails slapped the ground with a muffled sound. Lin An's eyes radiated a faint golden light. The tone is calm. Then I'll say it in words that animals can understand. I want to duel with you. The winner will become the real leader. The loser will naturally surrender. Lin En's words made Simba's eyes twinkle. Submit. If you just want this, I can answer it now. Then let me try to link with my spiritual power. Lin En grinned. There was a rumbling, low, but somewhat cold laughter in Simba's throat. Human, are you sure? Of course, humans, aren't they also a type of animals? The winner is the king of the law of the weak and the strong, don't you do the same. I allow you to bring your helper and come together. In exchange, I hope you don't use the other herds behind you, after all, if they die, it will only make you and I feel distressed. Lin En's voice fell. Simba stared at Lin En. A low growl came out of his teeth. Good. Simba's head was spinning rapidly. I suddenly felt a little regret in my heart. I still seem to be too naive. Even Simba didn't regard Lin En as his own kind at all. However, wouldn't it be good for everyone to resist the tide together and then part ways to see each other? Could it be that Lin En is so confident? If they are both injured now, can they beat the corpse tide? Or is he just so confident that he can win a few of us together? The mental power network in Simba's brain constantly conveys thoughts, and Yinbei and Jinyu are secretly communicating with it. Let's go together. There are not many human beings behind him. If we let all the animals go together, maybe we can kill this damn human. Silverback stared at Lin En fiercely. No, if that's the case, we'll have to run. You don't know how terrifying that corpse tide looks. Jinyu refused. It had observed the situation everywhere before. To be honest, the power of the zombies converging together really made it frightened. Shang Ru was free, so Jinyu might just fly away, but there was no way. Its mental power was also connected to Simba, so he couldn't run, he couldn't help himself. Simba looked anxiously behind Lin En, thinking about plans and decisions for many actions. Lin En was motionless and looked very calm, giving them enough time to think. Running is inappropriate. Simba is very clear, just like he likes to eat mutant zombies, those mutant zombies will also like him very much. Once discovered and surrounded, even if it is himself, I am afraid there will be a big problem. Moreover, if running away at this moment, how could Lin En be willing? Simba never understood why Lin En changed his mind so quickly, even after it had prepared for the corpse tide. Before the two turned their faces, it first prepared to be strong. If Lin En is too strong in resisting the corpse tide, it can also run away in advance. But now. Damn, do you really think you're going to kill me? Simba's eyes gradually became fierce. Its golden beast pupils seemed to be shining slightly. The weak eat the strong is king. Go. Almost as soon as this concept popped into my head, Silverback jumped forward suddenly. At this moment, its muscles suddenly swelled up, and when it ran, it seemed that it could hear the sound of a cow rubbing from its bones. For a distance of more than 10 meters, it only needed a jump. In the process of this step, Yinbei's originally tall body continued to expand again, 7 meters, 10 meters, and even reached an astonishing height of 20 meters. In the period after it fought against Lin En again, it has made great improvements and progress. In the sky, Jinyu neighed, and the golden feathers on his body suddenly fell a few times, flying towards Lin En like a bullet. These golden feathers flew extremely fast in the air, and even continued to accelerate until they exploded 2 air masses that broke the speed of sound, and the feathers actually flashed a metallic luster in the air. Simba stood at the end, and the 3 snake tails suddenly lifted up behind him. Above the snake tails, it really seemed like 3 poisonous snakes. He opened the snake bell and spat out snake letters. A huge spiritual shock hit Lin En invisible. Lin En just doesn't have to. The meow Dao behind him seemed to turn into an afterimage. Jingle. The few sounds were almost connected to a crisp sound. The meow Dao collided with the golden light in the air, and the few golden feathers were directly slashed by Lin En's meow Dao, almost being chopped into 2 pieces. Jinyu let out a heartache and an angry neigh, and flew down towards Lin En. You must know that those feathers, like its natal magic weapon, can be reused, one less than one. Lin En just stretched out his hand. Behind him, countless black lights flickered. As if there were hundreds of tails sticking out from the right side, Lin En raised his fist and aimed at the pounced Silverback. This huge orangutan was threatening. It was like the top of a mountain, but the black light in Lin En's right hand expanded again and again, and when the Silverback roared and slammed his fist at him, the 2 fists met, and an incomparably conspicuous airwave exploded. Then, the sound of the bones continued to spread upwards, and the Silverback roared, but only felt a tingling in the arm. Lin En appeared on Yinbei's side in the blink of an eye, as if teleporting, with his right leg raised high, like a battle axe, sweeping across. The next moment, the entire terrifying huge body flew backwards to one side. It was actually knocked out. The huge body of 20 meters, like a stone thrown from the water, was directly used by the huge force and flew out. After crashing to the ground, it bounced up and fell several times, and then rolled a few times and stopped. Down. Then, Lin and really disappeared. Those who watched all this from a distance, whether it was the shivering mutant animals or the stunned Chang Peng and others, completely lost Lin An's vision in an instant. The moment when they saw Lin An again, all I saw was a figure stepping on Simba's head. Simba only felt a flower in front of him, and the next moment, a sudden force stepped on his head. Then, the body that was more than 6 meters tall fell forward unconsciously, and his head fell to the ground, making a roar. In its mind there was a great surprise. It was the real teleport ability. This Lin An, in addition to the power control and the weird black shape, actually had the ability to teleport. Although shocked, the Lion King is not an antelope to be slaughtered. The tail behind it suddenly swung forward and stretched for a few seconds in an instant, as if a poisonous snake was preying on it. Lin An's eyes still exuded a faint golden light at this moment. Tianyantong is always in play. He even opened the mind reader to the maximum intensity. The purpose is to read the subconscious mind that Symbol has not even noticed himself. What is the subconscious mind? When you face a basketball flying towards your face at high speed, you will instinctively choose to dodge or catch it. This is a very short thought, a subconscious action. And when used in battle, it cooperates with Tianyantong. That means, expect the enemy to come first. At this moment, before the poisonous snake rushed to Lin An, Lin An's figure disappeared again. After hesitating for a moment, and did not pull out the Miao Dao. In fact, if he fought with all his strength and aimed to kill a few Simba, Lin An had already used his Miao Dao, which had been strengthened many times, to turn Simba's head into a specimen. However, Lin An still wanted to convince it and make it his own. But also better. Punch to the flesh. Only then can Lin An play more happily. Boom. Simba only felt that a huge force suddenly hit his side. The whole body actually flew directly into the air. It collided with Jin Yu, who was rushing down. If Jin Yu hadn't desperately waved his wings and adjusted his posture, he might not have been dazzled by the momentum of Jin Yu's flying rush. But at this moment, Simba quickly realized the status quo. How could it not have noticed that Lin An had the opportunity to draw his sword, but he just did it without moving it? Go. There was an idea in its head, and Jin Yu quickly understood its meaning. At this moment, he took this opportunity to grab Simba with the strength of Lin An, and flew straight up. In the distance, the mutant animals who had kept tacit understanding and watching the battle immediately boiled. No matter how reluctant they were forcibly ordered by Simba to charge towards Lin An. The silver vest wailed in his heart that he was being treated as an abandoned child. Jin Yu was able to grab Simba and fly. It was already considered astonishing strength. It is absolutely impossible for a guy like him to be 7 or 8 meters in size. Follow along. Moreover, Simba's urging sound kept ringing in his head, causing it to drag Lin An. If you don't want to, and want to break the mental link, even if it will have to be severely traumatized at this moment, and it may even die directly. But fortunately, Lin An didn't give them a chance to die. When he realized that Simba was about to run away, he just smiled calmly. If it was before, it would be a little troublesome to say. But now, a pair of huge black wings suddenly appeared, and under the eyes of everyone, they flew high into the sky. The golden feather was numb. With Simba, it couldn't fly fast at all, and Lin An came behind it in just a few seconds. Lin An. These animals are all for you, but I don't want. Simba didn't finish his sentence. A huge mental shock suddenly rushed towards Lin An. Its cunning attack method still failed to work. Lin An's figure disappeared again. During this time, he wasted no time in getting familiar with the short-distance teleportation ability that Sirius had acquired from the evolutionary body before. Now, within 100 meters, he can complete teleportation with almost no preparation. Under the influence of spiritual energy and spiritual power, he could only feel a little dizziness. Unless he used it 7 or 8 times in a row, it would not affect his normal battle at all. Spiritual power was emptied again. Lin An appeared on Jin Yu's body, and several black light tails entangled from him like giant snakes, entangling Jin Yu and Simba. Click on how. Lin An suggested that if a few mutant animals were injured, perhaps when the corpse tide came, it would affect the combat effectiveness of Lin An's side. How could Simba not know that Lin An had already decided on his group? It roared angrily, but it still didn't give in. At this moment, its golden beast pupils lit up, and countless complicated mental waves struck people suffocating. And Lin An didn't dodge or evade. This time, he chose to fight it hard. The terrifying mental power wanted that room to collide with Simba directly. Lin An was trying to figure out how to use his mental power to attack before, but these days, it's not that there is no gain at all. The mental power that ordinary people can't see at all seems to condense into an all at this moment, mercilessly. At the moment when it hits Simba's mental power, it tore through a hole. Hiss. Simba let out a pained cry, and even Jin Yu fluctuated during this terrifying collision of mental power. Jin Yu was almost swept away by the impact force. If Lin hadn't tied it with black light, the two of them would have fallen directly. 0. Lin fluttered his wings to the ground slowly, and the group of animals beside him came to him, but at this moment, Simba almost fell into a coma and stopped. They looked at each other and winced. Silverback even braked suddenly and knelt on the ground. I think you are more suitable to be my boss than Simba. If it can break my spiritual link, I am willing to surrender. It's this naive guy who spoke very quickly at the moment, and even Simba, who was drowsy and felt like he was going to faint at any moment, was awakened by the shock of his words. Simba stood shaking, looking at Lin, clenching his teeth, feeling extremely aggrieved. He still has a lot of powerful abilities that he didn't have time to use at all, or, in other words, it was ineffective for Lin at all. Even his mental power couldn't capture Lin, and he couldn't find the north because of his teleportation fighting style. What other abilities could be effective against him? The power is even more like a human being, and the power of the black tail alone is much stronger than that of the empty and bulky waist like Silverback. Mental strength is also incomparable to each other. Even before the other party did his best, the Miao Dao was only used to block Jin Yu's feathers, and it was never used again. The group of people behind him also seemed to give Simba the feeling of a mutant zombie. Probably not a normal character either. Hit, fart. This guy is so strong, he was talking about a fart alliance at that time, wouldn't it be enough to fight him directly? The Lion King only felt aggrieved and aggrieved. It is incomprehensible that Lin will be able to almost double in strength in half a month. Monster. This is. The more it thought about it, the more desperate it became, but the survival instinct still made it give up the idea of a dead fish and a net. At least. Don't want to die, even that idiot Silverback knows what to do. Simba lowered his head and let out a mournful sigh. I am willing to surrender. It took the initiative to send its head to Lin's hand. Lin just stretched out his hand with a smile. Simba did not resist. Obediently let Lin link up with spiritual power and become a part of the other party's spiritual network. Lin only felt that countless threads suddenly appeared in his spiritual power network. Among them, several tenacious spiritual power links gave him a feeling of comfort like a long drought and a sweet rain in an instant. These extra mental power links, like the previous Rat King, began to give feedback to Lin's mental power continuously. While continuously strengthening Lin's spiritual power, Lin also clearly felt the existence of mutant animals such as Simba. Done. Call it a day. Unfortunately, couldn't get into a good fight. Lin was a little sighed, and suddenly felt a little cold at the heights. But soon, he suppressed his fluttering state of mind. Where is this going? The corpse tide hasn't come yet. In the corpse tide, there are not a few difficult opponents. Although the self in the simulation survived unharmed, if it is careless, the result will be unknown. Because of Lin in the simulation, there is no doubt that he did his best to succeed. Lin took his eyes off Simba, and even at this moment, he could still feel unwillingness, remorse, depression, and long-term emotions constantly emerging from its spiritual power, but Lin didn't care. Let a guy like Simba who is used to being the boss be the younger brother, he should not be emotional. Just get used to it. For it, maybe this is a better way. What's more, Lin also has his own spell, Black Light, that can be issued to them in batches. Under the double insurance, once they disconnect the mental link for some reason, they want to give it a try and try to get out of his control. The Black Light became the second insurance. When their mental power was dissipated, they were completely swallowed up, and the Black Light monster formed after that. Lin would just recycle it. Of course, mutant animals that are too weak have no such qualifications, and they have to waste Lin's attention to the black light in their bodies. Looking back, Chang Peng and the others have long been stunned, and Lin's battle just now happened between Lightning and Flint. They only saw that these terrifying mutant animals were like poor dolls, being thrown around by Lin at will, but just the sound and movement of the Silverback landing made the ground seem to tremble. Can humans really be that strong? Congratulations, no accident happened, let's go back. Lin raised his head and looked at the sky. The cloud has not yet dissipated. The corpse tide is approaching. September 28th. Today's wind is very noisy. Lin stood on top of a tall building, quietly looking at the dark shadows that formed a line in the distance. His location is S-City. There was a faint golden light in his eyes, and the situation in the distance was very clearly transmitted to his eyes. It was a scene of swaying zombies with dull eyes, attacking like an ocean. 10,000. 100,000. 1 million. Lin couldn't figure it out. Even with Tianyantong, he could only get a rough idea, because there were too many. So much that he can't seem to see the end. The target of these zombies is extremely clear, across the wilderness, through the city, and the goal is to end city. Lin watched quietly above the high-rise buildings in S City, and he also caught the figures of countless mutant zombies in his eyes. Compared with mutants, evolutionaries, and even powerful mutant animals, the number of mutant zombies in these zombies is really too many. Although most of their mutated strengths will not be as prominent as evolutionaries or mutants. But once the quantity reaches a certain point, it also causes a qualitative change. Countless complex abilities are piled up together, allowing hundreds of mutant zombies to exert a powerful force that dozens of mutants cannot resist. Lin just looked at it carefully, and among them, there seemed to be some mutant zombies who noticed his existence, and a small wave of zombies walked in his direction, but more zombies were still walking in a straight line. At this moment, these zombies are no longer at the speed of the old man walking. On average, they are already the same as the speed of human running. Although they can't reach the speed of human running with all their strength, they will not get tired at all. What? Do it. After Lin spoke to the walkie-talkie, suddenly, a series of roars sounded from the concealment of S City. The sound of artillery and mortars was accompanied by a rattling roar, and sparks suddenly exploded from the corpses several kilometers away. The mutant animals that covered the sky also suddenly took off, flying from the roof of S City, carrying countless trigger-type explosives, and flew towards the corpse tide, like a fighter jet, dropping the explosives on top of their heads. The continuous roaring sound did not change Lin's expression in the slightest, just because even though the bombs that had been prepared for a long time sent countless zombies flying into the sky, the figures of the zombies did not seem to have been reduced much. Moreover, after this series of explosions, the corpse group in the distance began to spread out, and it was no longer as dense as before. The attack attracted attention, and the commander of the corpse group realized that the people here were probably well prepared for their arrival. Simply doing nothing, the entire corpse tide reversed direction and rushed towards S City, trying to catch the hidden enemy. Lin's expression didn't change, but he picked up the walkie-talkie again. The corpse is approaching and evacuated as planned. After many soldiers started the second round of shooting swiftly, they took the vehicles that were hidden in the city in advance in an orderly manner, and began to evacuate with weapons. No matter how fast the zombies are, they can't be faster than the vehicles at all. There are only a few extremely fast mutant zombies who cross a distance of several kilometers in one step, trying to keep a few people. However, a red laser suddenly shot out from a window. This fiery red ray instantly pierced through the head of a mutant zombie, and even two black holes appeared on the ground. Chang Peng turned his sight, and the red laser in the air turned around, dividing a mutant zombie into two parts. Quack. Several small black swords flew from the corner, Zhang Qingshui's fingers slipped, and these small black swords nailed several menacing zombies to the spot. Let's go. Zhang Qingshui thought, and one of the small black swords that flew upside down in the distance suddenly became several times larger. She stepped on it in the air and stepped on the sword. She was really like a sword fairy, soaring to the sky. These small black swords are the products of Yin Xiaoxiao's changes and Lin's continuous strengthening. The quality and ability have already basically belonged to the stage of metaphysics. The rest of the small black swords surrounded the surroundings, and with the help of a decent flying speed, they flexibly called the mutant zombies that approached first one by one in the air. The car rumbled, and countless vehicles turned around and followed the prepared route, and evacuated along the cleared road to the second blocking point. Lin didn't plan to let this group of zombies get close to N City comfortably. Starting from S City, every time this group of zombies walked a certain distance, they had to leave a place of corpses for him. In this way, when the zombies arrive near the city, at least half the number of zombies can be cut down. A big wave of mud rolled ahead and set off ahead, and several zombies were caught off guard by the ground and swept into the ground, and then there was a sour crushing sound. Zheng Dang whistled at Lin, blinked, got on a motorcycle, and left without looking back. The direction that each evolutionary person is responsible for is prescribed, as long as it covers the evacuation of ordinary soldiers. Ice picks danced, red rays swept the ground, black flying swords flew, and from time to time 2 sniper shots sounded like shelling. There are also 3 evolutionaries who merged from other shelters before. Among them, one can transform his body into various weapons, including modern weapons. At this moment, his hands and shoulders have turned into heavy machine guns. The bullets are extremely fast, but at the cost of physical and mental strength, they can bombard with infinite bullets all the time. This ability is very similar to one of the evolutionaries that Lin met before and was killed by him. There is another one. At this moment, a blade grows all over his body. It is like a hero named Dragon Turtle in Law that Lin played before, shrinking into a ball and turning into a wheel like a hedgehog. The remaining one was the most powerful among them. At this moment, the man was burning with flames, and he was able to fly in the air. With a wave of his hand, the blasting flames that were no less than a grenade fell to the ground, and the zombies were turned upside down. Just a few evolutionaries, in just 1 minute, the number of mutant zombies killed reached an astonishing 50 or 60. Although most of these mutant zombies are special in speed, they are not very powerful, but the result of this battle is enough to make the commander of the zombie tide realize that he has made a big mistake. Elite fighting elites is never what zombies are good at. It must play a quantitative advantage. As a result, many mutant zombies returned to the queue and mixed in the corpse group. At this moment, in the corpse group, long-range attacks of various colors also lit up. A dark green, highly corrosive acid cannonball suddenly lifted into the air, and shot towards the evolutionary who turned into a weapon. The evolver's face changed, and all over his body suddenly glowed with various metallic luster. The next moment, the whole person turned into a small fighter jet and took off into the sky, evading the attack of the green acid bomb by the slightest. Zhang Qingshui was also regarded as an important threat. Among the corpses, several spear-like short spears flew towards her. Zhang Qingshui just stepped on the foot, the flying sword rose, and the power of the mind was slightly affected, and she avoided the blow. Pay attention to safety, you can withdraw. Lin gave the order. The evolutionaries began to retreat one after another. Those who could fly flew away by themselves, and those who couldn't, also prepared their enhanced motorcycles in advance, twisted the accelerator, and ran fast. At this moment, a mutant zombie suddenly rushed out of the corpse group. The mutant zombie is not big, similar to a human, but it has elk-like horns growing on its head, and its feet are not human feet, but like deer hooves. Running at this moment, the speed is so fast that it is like a teleportation, and the speed per second is even close to 70 or 80. Its purpose is very clear, that is, when humans are ready to evacuate, leave a person behind. As long as one is left, it is enough for other mutant zombies and corpses to kill it. Lin suddenly jumped from the tall building. The black light behind him turned into wings, and after accelerating again for a moment, his whole body disappeared in the air in a strange way, and after the teleportation, a black seedling knife flashed away from the air. The mutant zombie didn't have time to react. His body was divided into upper and lower parts, and each flew out a few hundred meters. Boom. The sound of sniper gunfire on the tall building in the distance disappeared in a flash, and the upper half of the mutant zombie's head disappeared. Lin turned his head and saw the thumbs up from Yin Xiaoxiao and Yan Shi on the roof several kilometers away. You go too. He picked up the walkie-talkie and said. At this moment, the corpse tide has rushed into S City. The entire corpse tide was only a few hundred meters away from Lin. It wasn't until they were getting closer now that Lin finally felt the oppression brought about by the corpse tide. No matter which direction you look at, this group of zombies looks boundless, like black waves. It was like a tsunami, as if the ocean was flooded. Lin watched silently for a while. Black light wings appeared behind him, and fluttered in the sky. Countless bone spurs, venom, and even all kinds of stones, discarded parts, and cement blocks that were grabbed by some mutant zombies all flew towards Lin. Lin just flashed and teleported away from the spot. The next moment, instead of retreating, he advanced, and he flew towards the corpse tide in the air. No end in sight. Even though Lin leapt towards the corpse tide, and even took a few breaths to fly more than 1,000 meters away, the corpse tide still couldn't see the head, as if it came from the end of the horizon. He didn't go too deep, but chose the most dense place and landed suddenly. The moment he stepped heavily on the ground, countless zombies swarmed around him, trying to keep him on the ground forever. In front of him, behind him, and beside him, countless zombies roared, and their hideous faces were extremely terrifying. In midair, several mutant zombies jumped up and Lin could even see the bloodthirsty in those blood-red eyes. And Lin just flashed black and red light all over. Thousands of tentacles, and everything. He muttered quietly. So, the next moment, everything seemed to stand still. The zombies that rushed towards him seemed to have pressed the pause button in an instant. Countless black and red tentacles suddenly protruded from Lin's side. Like a giant hedgehog. Covered the sky, with almost no gaps. Covered the range of hundreds of meters around. It was as if in an instant, a poignant black and red line drawing was drawn on the ground, forming a cobweb. Some of those zombies were not stabbed to the point of death, but they died suddenly in an instant, and the black light greedily absorbed all the energy from them. Lin clenched his fists and pressed his hands down hard. The next moment, these black and red lines were taken back to him. Twisted his neck, full of energy. It's time to make a big fuss. He happily pulled out the Miao Dao in his hand. Come on. Stand and be happy. Just like in the CG of the LOL game, Yasuo blew a strong wind and swept everything, and Lin's figure was also in the corpse tide, setting off one wave after another. Countless zombies that turned into pieces flew high into the sky, and before they landed, they were already a corpse. Lin and clashed left and right. In the endless tide of corpses, he was like a tornado in a wheat field. Wherever he went, there was an open space. It was not until he felt a little pressure that he acted decisively and began to slowly retreat into the city. If he can feel a little pressure, it means that he has already met the main force in the corpse tide. This also means that he is no longer on the edge of the corpse tide at this moment, at least, it is also in the center. The mutant zombies encountered have also become much stronger, their violent postures are different, and their abilities are strange. Even Lin occasionally had to teleport to dodge because of some unexpected abilities, to avoid being left in place and taking damage. In the process of fighting and retreating, Lin did not feel the slightest fatigue. On the contrary, when some pressure appeared, he actually felt a certain kind of joy from the inside out. I really want to play here all day. Such an idea popped into Lin's mind. But it was only fleeting, he had his own business to do, and the reason why he was entangled with the corpse tide was not to familiarize himself with his abilities, or to expect him to slowly reduce the number of corpse tides here by himself. Instead, let them fall into their own traps. As Lin continued to fight invincibly in the corpse tide, the location of the corpse tide became more and more concentrated towards a housing area in J City. Lin didn't hurry, until he felt the timing was right, then he suddenly waved his wings and ascended into the sky. Some mutant zombies tried to use various abilities to keep him, but Lin just teleported again and escaped. This teleportation ability is really useful. Without this ability, even Lin would not dare to play like this. Lin, who was flying higher and higher, faced the incompetent and furious corpse group, just smiled and turned his right hand. The detonator that he kept in his arm with black light appeared in his hand. I have strengthened the bombs many times and exploded in this way, I don't know how powerful they are. Without hesitation, Lin pressed the detonation button. Boom. The next moment, the earth shook like an earthquake. Countless firelights tore the ground and all obstacles, and directly tore countless buildings into pieces. There were firelights and broken stones, cement blocks, and iron pieces everywhere. Lin even flew high into the sky at this moment. A terrifying giant wave still lifted him a few times in the air and waved his wings a few times before he stabilized. The terrifying heat can clearly make Lin feel the slightest sadness even if it is thousands of meters away. The air mass seemed to have turned into a small mushroom cloud, and for a while, Lin's feet were filled with dust and smoke, and even the corpse tide could not be seen. Lin's eyes shone with golden light, and Tianyantong broke through the fog for him. Within a few kilometers, there is no one that can jump. A few kilometers away, there are also countless zombies twisted, some bleeding from 7 orifices, and some distorted and missing parts. Lin nodded in satisfaction. He chuckled lightly, under the gaze of a group of mutant zombies with wisdom who could understand what happened. In his hands, several detonators appeared again. Art as a blast. Boom, 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 boom. The entire S-city turned into a big firework. Lin flew to the sky, watching this city, which was built in an unknown number of years, was destroyed by his own hands. Involuntarily, he sighed softly, but at the same time, destroyed along with the almost destroyed S-city. There are also countless corpses attracted by Lin. He looked up, and for a while, there seemed to be no more zombies that could move under his feet. In the distance, there was still a steady stream of corpses moving towards City N. It suddenly stopped for a moment. Lin couldn't help but smile. My first gift for you, I hope you like it. He waved at the lucky zombies who didn't enter the city. No matter how the zombies commanding the corpse tide controlled the corpse tide, it must have its own vision in the corpse tide. Lin believes that it must see itself at this moment. After waving his hand, he waved his wings and flew towards N City. He's in no hurry. On the long road, there are many more gifts he prepared. Zombies learn to be smarter. In other words, the commander behind him became smarter after realizing that Lin did not fight, but came prepared. It used a large number of ordinary zombies to stand in front, and some flexible, even mutant zombies with detection ability followed closely, dispersing a dense formation, slowly advancing, and no longer dared to rush in. After eating 2 art as a blast, and it can go where it goes. Lin is also not sure how many commanders are behind this group of corpses, but he is very clear that the biggest difference between zombies and mutants may be in the aspect of memory. The mutants may still have some human memories, but as a zombie, Lin has yet to see a monster that can speak human language or act like a human. Without memory, it means that no matter how smart they are, they have to suffer from losses in order to have a long memory. Facing the various tactics and weapons accumulated by human beings over the years, they do not suffer losses before they can explain the big problem. As a result, This group of zombies had to move forward with difficulty under many ambush. Almost every 1,000 meters they advanced, they had to raise a firework. With Lin En's strengthening, even ordinary grenades can be used as mines when they are bundled together and buried. In addition, Lin En also taught many lessons to this group of zombies. For example, using a group of mice to dig a hole, and when the group of corpses gathers in certain places, let a little mouse go in with an explosive on his back and sacrifice himself generously. The art is explosion. Another example is to use the method of sounding the east and attacking the west, using the flying mutant animals to pull the corpse tide formation, and then a group of mutant animals that move extremely fast on the land will shoot out from the side, take a bite and run. When the corpse tide is chasing the mutant animals, the formation is chaotic and raised again, and the flying mutant animals or mice will use explosives to teach them a lesson. In addition, there are many disgusting play that they have never seen before. Later, the corpse group even decided to take a detour. Unexpectedly, this made Lin En more serious. How can there be so many explosives in the gathering place? The fireworks in S City were enhanced and transformed by many torpedoes. But Lin En's performance was so fierce that he had to make the group of zombies think that there were too many explosives on the human side. In order to avoid being bombed by nests, they would enter every forest, preferring to go over mountains and mountains rather than walking on roads full of ambush. Seemingly ordinary woods, but after they entered, they seemed to have stepped into the trap of the devil. Even a seemingly ordinary little flower may hide a huge mouth that can swallow mutant zombies alive. Countless mutated plants were mixed with ordinary plants, making the mutated zombies almost like soldiers. In the end, they tried to walk for more than half a day, and had to go back to the road in embarrassment. Die if you die, at least if you die for another day, you will reach N City. Lin En was happy. I really want to see what the mutant zombies who are commanding the corpse group look like now. It is estimated that the zombies are beginning to suspect that the idea of gathering corpses is not correct. This human being is different from what it has seen before. The human beings encountered before, even if it is a gathering place, once regarded as a target by a large number of zombies, in the end, apart from escaping, there is almost no way to survive. Killing hundreds of thousands of zombies is incredible. And Lin En is just a firework art in S City, at least hundreds of thousands of zombies have been lost. If you count the number of missing arms and legs, there may be millions. It's so outrageous, the zombies who died in a long time are almost enough for a city. No matter how many zombies there are, those who act on this land and those who are summoned will only exceed 100 million in total. At this moment, it is divided into several batches, and the number facing N City is only about 20 to 30 million. After all, in addition to humans, they also have the natural enemy of mutant animals, and the loss when moving is by no means rare, not to mention that mutant zombies need food, and sometimes they have to eat their own kind to satisfy their hunger. Flying in the air, Lin En, who was watching the movement of the corpse tide, looked at the prompt of the simulator in front of him after another explosion. Zombie Destroyer. Kill 1 million zombies, completed, and get 10,000 survival points after completion. Zombie Nemesis. Kill 10 million zombies, 1,007,100++, and get 20,000 survival points for completion. Zombie Extermination Expert. Kill 100 million zombies, unopened, and you can get 100,000 survival points for completion. Elite Zombie Hunter. Kill 100 mutant zombies, 100 100ths, and get survival points reward, 1,000. Mutant Zombie Destroyer. Kill 1,000 mutated zombies, 521 1,000ths, and you can get survival points reward, 10,000. Zombie Future Destroyer. Kill 10 super mutant zombies with huge potential, 10 out of 10, and you can get survival points reward after completion, 1,000. Zombie Death Omen Star. Kill 100 super mutant zombies with huge potential, 17 100ths, and you can get survival points reward, 10,000. Lin En was stunned for a moment, then suddenly his mind moved. Current survival points, 12,543.1. This is the survival point that Lin En currently has. Lin En quickly calculated, and then got a rough figure. If the tide of corpses is repelled and the head is robbed actively. When the corpse tide is over, in addition to the above milestones, he will definitely be able to unlock several more milestones. Among them, Lin En estimates that 80% of them still have several hidden milestones that are very rewarding. At that time, the survival points are very likely to reach the peak in history, breaking through 6 figures for the first time. Golden Talent, or Simulator Enhancement. Lin En thought for a while, and then took a closer look at the Golden Talent list. The decision is made. He wants it all. Lin En, at this speed, they should be able to reach the vicinity of City N tomorrow afternoon. Unlike Lin En, who has already started to think about how to use points, the people around him are still not very optimistic about the situation. This group of zombies, it seems like they can't finish killing them. Obviously they used so many explosions, and it was difficult to delay so many traps, but when they saw the corpse tide, they still felt a wave of powerlessness. Why can't you kill it? Lin turned his head. Chang Peng beside him looked a little tired. He also participated in ambush many times today. His laser eyes are very powerful, especially when it is used to cut grass. Most of the ordinary zombies are really broken. It's just that the greater the power, the greater the consumption, especially Chang Peng's spiritual talent is not outstanding, even if the ability is good, but the growth rate is slightly slower than Zhang Qingshui and others. The speed of recovery is not as fast as theirs. Even evolutionary people will have slight differences in talent, which not only exist in the ability to awaken, but also in comprehensive aspects such as mental power and physical quality. I know, don't worry, our goal now is to kill their combat effectiveness as much as possible, and when we reach End City, the real tug of war begins. It's okay to collapse now, take a break, I'm afraid there will be no time to rest. Lin patted Chang Peng on the shoulder. Chang Peng sighed, shook his head with a wry smile, and turned his head to look. At this moment, even Yin Xiaoxiao was just holding gun oil and Yan Shi maintaining the weapon with a relaxed expression. I see, he said. Yin Xiaoxiao and these girls are more calm than herself, and she can't be like this anymore. Chang Peng cheered himself up. Tomorrow afternoon. Lin was thoughtful. This tug of war is likely to be fought for a long time. Zombies will not be tired, but the commander of the zombies is not necessarily so. The more units it needs to command and control, the more energy it needs to consume. Lin must consume the energy of the zombie commander as much as possible. In this way, he can prevent the zombies from rushing forward, using fueling tactics, and pushing forward with cannon fodder. The corpse group had to rest and give the commander time to recover his spiritual power, so that the advantage of the tug of war would come to the human side, and there would be enough time to digest this group of enemies. Continue the harassment tactics, true and false, let the commander of the other side tense up, and don't let it rest for a moment. Lin gave orders to the evolutionaries. The closer you are to the end domain at this moment, the stronger the ability to block the corpse tide. Combining from other gathering places, tanks, armored vehicles, and even several missile vehicles can also attack at predetermined positions in advance. Lin didn't let too many ordinary warriors participate in the blocking battle, at least, not before the corpse tide reached End City. In the event of an accident, it would be impossible to evacuate at the speed of ordinary warriors, and now there are just enough warriors in the gathering area. That's it, there are still a bunch of survivors who have just been trained, and there is only this number. Therefore, the so-called step tank synergy mainly is to let mutant animals contribute. There were some fluctuations in mental power, and Lin squinted and sensed that it was Simba who was using the mental power network to talk to him. Found a small group of mutant zombies trying to get around, do you want to stop them? Let them run again, get close and fight again. Lin gave the order. A powerful mutant animal like Simba may be helpless in the face of Lin, but in the face of zombies, it is a completely different situation. Their physical strength is often much larger than that of zombies. Although their special abilities may be slightly less diverse than mutant zombies, they are also simple and effective. With Jin Yu, the mutant giant eagle leading the flying animals as reconnaissance, there is no chance for the zombies to escape Lin's sight. Time passed little by little. From noon until midnight, and from midnight until noon the next day. On September 29th, the corpse tide finally arrived near End City after paying a huge price. However, what awaits them is a torrent of steel that is even more powerful and makes them more desperate. Countless bunkers rose out of thin air, gullies everywhere, and fire lines almost blocked the entire road. Staggered, countless bullets and shells fell like rain. A meat grinder like frontal blocking battle, it finally kicks in. Bullets were flying, and gunfire was roaring. In the modern battlefield, the crushing scene that should not have appeared, but after 100 years, it started again. Countless zombies were foolishly hit by the sudden fire, even if they wanted to spread out, but to be honest, their base was too large. Many survivors who have just picked up their guns have thus obtained a good opportunity to practice their skills, overcome their fears, and become familiar with weapons. The zombies who fell like reaping wheat were almost completely powerless to fight back against the terrifying firepower network. If human beings have the most anything, it is undoubtedly bullets. Lin stores and transports, a large part of it these days are bullets. He estimated that the number of corpses was about 20 million, and the bullets should have at least 10 times the storage capacity. For this reason, the recent days of the Dawning Refuge have been difficult, if not for the escort of mutant animals such as Simbaba, and the concerted efforts of all kinds of talents, such a situation would not be possible at all. However, after working so hard for so long, it is for now that the zombies can feel the pain. Fire. Fire. Change the machine gun, don't burn the barrel. Shot. Don't let go of the flight, You've got all the bullets in the sky. They're still some distance away. Don't panic. When they get close to us, retreat to the back. There's no danger. Loud cries were heard. Linen even had to fly higher, to temporarily clear his ears and pay close attention to everything in his field of vision. It stands to reason that the shooting range of rifles and machine guns is also limited, and at the speed of zombies, they can be pushed flat soon. However, Linen was well prepared. When the group of zombies approached, they realized that a large pit suddenly collapsed on the ground. Chi is in the sunken ground. When the zombies fall in and think about it, they are a little desperate. This height is at least 5 meters high. Except for the mutant zombies, other zombies can't climb up at all. Moreover, the most confusing thing about zombies is that the inside is very slippery. A mutant zombie reached out and grabbed a piece of soil, and tilted his head with a puzzled look. This smell is so pungent. Why is it pungent? The answer will be revealed soon. The evolutionary player who had performed brilliantly before suddenly flew high from the battle line at this moment, with flames all over his body, raised his hand, and an oversized fireball smashed towards the tunnel. The next moment, explosions and flames flickered. What made the zombies dumbfounded the most was the next moment. In the deep pit that surrounded the position like a moat, the fire spread rapidly. In just a few minutes, it was so long that it could not be seen clearly, and the potholes that covered all the zombies' forward routes were all set on fire. This is not gasoline. It is a variant of the plant that Linen studies. The original research purpose of this plant was to obtain sufficient fuel to survive the nuclear winter. Linen also wants to try to use the oil extracted from this plant instead of some fuel. But in the end, I found that this thing is not only useful, but at this moment, it can be used as the best burning agent. Once it is burned, with the amount of lin and goji, it can burn for at least half an hour. And the zombies fell in, but they became new fuel, so the burning time would even be longer. Moreover, the temperature of this fuel is extremely high, and ordinary zombies may even be directly roasted into ashes. This also means that if the zombies want to fill the pit with corpses, the difficulty has also increased. Lin asked Zhang Li to dig this deep pit. I have to say that although this girl is ill, she is really unambiguous in her actions. As long as Lin said it, she would do it even if she gritted her teeth and tried her best. As a result, in a short period of time, the zombies simply cannot cross the distance of 1 or 2 kilometers. Countless zombies fell into the deep pit without breaking, and the ones who didn't have time to fall later were lining up to eat guns. The one who fell in was screamed by the blazing fire. A few mutant zombies chose to jump over, but they were taken care of. Many marksmen have been specially responsible for paying attention to these guys, and naturally they will not succeed. Suddenly, a huge, wobbly, giant fat zombie stepped out of the queue. It shook its head with both hands, and its body was like a small grave, standing at the front, eating bullets. The bullet landed on it, as if it had hit the rubber, it dented for a moment, and then bounced off. This big fat zombie tried to use himself to open the way. But, welcome it. Boom. Duan Xiaoxiao's shoulders swayed slightly, the sniper rifle in his hand smoked, and the giant zombie's head disappeared together with its hanging hand. The sniper rifle that has been strengthened so many times, even Linen, doesn't want to try it on the front. Hiss. Among the corpses, there was a roar, and a sudden cloud of blue liquid flew and fell from it, and the fire in a deep pit suddenly decreased. Boom. There was another roar of a sniper rifle, and the mutant zombie that spit out the frozen liquid was immediately named in the corpse group. Even though the mutant zombie cunningly hid behind several zombies, this bullet, like a cannonball, directly blew out small holes in its range. The corners of Yan Shi's mouth were hooked, and she pulled the bolt again. Cool. Lin just watched silently. Everything is planned. From time to time, a rather powerful zombie tried to take the lead in charging to open a passage, and Lin appeared as a hero, punching it into a small pancake for Haiguang to eat. It's a pity that the current Lin is really too strong. These mutant zombies who die with one punch are not really a threat to him, and they can't trigger serious at all. This made Lin wonder. Why was he able to obtain the ability to teleport over a short distance? Logically speaking, the guy with this ability is not as powerful as these zombies. Could it be that? Lin squinted his eyes thoughtfully. This space teleportation ability, in essence, can also be used to attack. This kind of attack ability, even he himself, may be killed by one blow? Only then does it make sense. During this time, he planned to study the teleportation ability very little. There was no way, there were too many things to do. This is why he is so eager for a golden talent. Thinking acceleration, gold, your thinking ability will be greatly improved, and you have the ability to speed up your thinking. This thing looks very simple, but Lin believes that the degree of development is absolutely not low, and even involves the ability of brain development. A simple sentence, but already full of two meanings. One is to improve Lin An's brain power, and the other is to accelerate the ability that seems a little mysterious. Lin An asked the simulator several times, but he didn't get much, but his sixth sense gave him a hunch. With the improvement of his spiritual power, his sixth sense became stronger and stronger. Just like in the preparations during this period of time, he had many times, it was the sixth sense in the dark, and then told him to do so. Wrong. This is indeed the case. This time, the ambush battle is basically perfect. Including the choice of the ambush location and method, this kind of sixth sense combined with Lin An's judgment has brought him great benefits. Or, it is also a manifestation of luck. Heaven rewards hard work, and sometimes God has to see your hard work. There is no doubt that Lin An is the one who is always concerned by God. As long as he works hard to become better, things will often happen along his lines. Lin An, the zombies seem to be retreating. A small voice sounded on the walkie-talkie on Lin An's shoulder. At this moment, she used the sniper scope to observe the movement of the corpse tide, but found that a large number of mutant zombies began to retreat. Only ordinary zombies are still rushing forward, foolishly falling into the pit or being sent away by bullets. Lin An made a judgment and said, they want to use ordinary zombies to open Lu Jiao first, and use mutant zombies to attack. In addition, it is also possible that the zombie who has been commanding behind his back is also a little tired and wants to take a rest. Anyway, ordinary zombies don't feel bad even if they die. Lin An sneered, his wings fluttered. Does that give you a break? Start the preparatory plan. The voice fell, and at the rear of the front, several missile launchers began to enter the loading state. Lin An observed the corpse tide for a while, and after making a judgment on the specific direction, he ordered to fire. The meteor-like missile drew long tail flames in the air. Countless streamers rushed towards the corpse tide. The sound of the bombing and the light of the fire suddenly exploded. In the corpse tide, many mutant zombies did not have time to respond, and were directly blown into the sky by the missiles that fell from the sky. Then, those mutant zombies began to disperse in an instant. Lin An swooped down, and immediately, everyone turned on their backs. The mutant zombies seemed to be tangled in place, and they all paused for a moment. Then, the tide came towards Lin An like a tide. This time, the commander of the zombies seemed to have paid for it, and for a moment, the ordinary zombie tried desperately to keep Lin An. And countless mutant zombies also began to leap, trying to keep him here forever. Lin An didn't move like a mountain, but the black light beside him suddenly appeared. The black light swept around like a long whip, and countless zombies turned on their backs. It wasn't until there were more and more mutant zombies that Lin An suddenly stretched out his hand. Thousands of tentacles and everything. Countless red silk threads spread out, blocking the entire space in an instant. Countless zombies were frozen in place, and the black light greedily absorbed everything, and then Lin An teleported again and rose into the air. Taking advantage of this constant pulling, also took advantage of the commander's idea of beheading Lin An. Like dancing on a tightrope, Lin An faced danger many times, but left the place with ease before the encirclement was formed, leaving countless mutant zombies screaming in the sky, but there was no way to do it. After pulling for more than 10 minutes, the mutant zombies realized that Lin An was consciously procrastinating. Seeing this, Lin An just called for fire support again. Countless rockets flew again, and after the roar ended, those mutant zombies suffered heavy losses again. This time, the commander fully understood that if he continued to struggle, he would be wasting the number of his mutant zombies. Want to deal with everything head-on? There is only one way: push it horizontally with ordinary zombies. Let you burn a million, and a million more. Kill a million, and a million more. Even if 10 million zombies died, it would be enough to push them to the gathering place of N City little by little. When you reach the refuge, as long as you can break through the city wall, there is no way for humans to retreat. Next, it is a feast for zombies. I have to say, this method does work. Once the decision-makers behind the zombies had decided, Lin An really had no good way to stop it, and could only keep trying to name and catch some powerful mutant zombies. But these mutant zombies were also given the order to save their lives and retreat. After dispersing, it was like a fish into the sea. Lin An tried it for a while, but the efficiency was too low and had to give up. Anyway, since the zombies decided to fill the hole with numbers, Lin An is also happy, so. Without the interference of mutant zombies, and even without the behind-the-scenes command, these ordinary zombies are just mindless fools. In the face of traps and bullets, although they have no idea of retreating, they have no idea of avoiding it. They can only fall into the pit again, and then climb up along the burning corpse of their companions. But they are also flammable, and in the end they can only fall to the ground and turn into black ash in the raging flames. What Lin An is responsible for is to keep adding oil, and even cooperate with Zheng Li to continue to expand the potholes. No one said, Lin and prepared a threshold, right? Under the double cooperation of the Mouse Group and Zheng Dang, at the moment, the deep pits outside the firepower point are 300 meters in length, and the deeper they go in, the deeper they go. Want to detour, or swim from the sea, or walk through a complex forest path filled with mutant plants by Linen? You must know that in the jungle full of mutant plants, the price that the zombies have to pay is no less than now, because as long as they go in addition to the mutant plants, Linen also has a large number of mutant animals ready. Wool and cloth. Just the mice lurking underground in the forest at any time is enough to make it difficult for the zombies to move. And these zombies still didn't seem to give in. If 10,000 is not enough, 100,000, if 100,000 is not enough, 1,000,000, these dense zombies rushed from noon to night, the sky was dark, and only gunfire continued to rhythmically continue to roar. The light came from the potholes that were still burning, the raging fire illuminated half of the night, and countless zombies continued to struggle. I don't know how many zombies died, but these monsters finally filled 3 large pits with their bodies, crossed 3 natural moat-like obstacles, and rushed towards the point of fire. Humans, however, are only retreating in an orderly manner. After leaving the first line of defense outside N City, there were 3 more choices before the monsters. 1. Swim across the sea. Well, even if the zombies don't need to breathe, it is possible to walk across the seabed, but now the danger in the sea is no easier than on land. Linen has not cleaned up the murlocs in it for many days, because his black light has also cleaned up the overlord in this offshore area, Brother Octopus. The little murlocs have no natural enemies at all. At this moment, the number of these murlocs is probably long ago born several times. In the ocean, the power of zombies is hardly worth mentioning, so are mutant zombies, which were not originally developed to fight in the sea. Then, there are only 2 other paths left. One way, go to the city. However, Lin En's big fireworks in S City really made the zombie commander feel fearful. Lin En could only make a rough estimate, but the zombie commander knew in his heart that apart from the zombies that were directly killed by the explosion, in fact, the deepest impact of the explosion on the group of corpses was disability. Those zombies who were injured by shockwaves, high temperature, and even flying fragments, lacking arms and legs, can't keep up with the rhythm at all, and can only be used as a reserve of food for the full number of miscellaneous soldiers or mutant zombies. The number of these injured zombies is the largest. Compared with the dozens of millions of zombies who died directly, there are still millions of zombies who are inconvenient to move. Now they can only gradually fall behind the team. Useless. If this happens again, the commander of the zombies thinks that there is no need to go up again, just go home and go to other gathering places to mess with other corpses. In the corpse group, it is not that there are no mutant zombies that can detect in flight, but unfortunately, they can't beat the mutant animals in the sky at all. The few powerful ones were discovered by Lin En just after they flew up and took them away directly. This is a bit of a collapse, and without the ability to dominate the air, you can only passively be beaten. Then, there is only one way left. Take a detour and walk directly through the woods, even if the woods look like a trap. But, no matter how great it is, it can't be as deadly as a bomb, can it? The big deal is to fill it with life directly, and the entire forest will be leveled. Zombies, it seems that they really have this bold idea. Go straight in, and you may fall into another trap. But, I just tore down the forest for you, how can you still ambush? As a result, the corpse tide made a bend in the eyes of everyone and went straight to the forest. At this moment, Chang Peng, who was watching all this together with Lin En in N City, couldn't help but be astonished. It's really like a god. It's better to say that this kind of person who sees the future and can control the future is not an exaggeration to say that he is a god. Zheng Li chuckled a few times. She was still the same, if it weren't for the fact that her face was dark with gunpowder and battles at the moment. The way she looked when she was talking would be really suitable for wearing a precious red dress and a pair of high feet with red wine cup. Strange to say, some people talk like this, it will only make people feel a little yin and yang or pretend. But perhaps because she was familiar with the nature of her bad woman, Lin En felt that it was normal for her to say so. She even knew that 60 to 70% of her words were sincere. Yeah, fortunately Lin En came to us, otherwise, I really don't know how to get rid of this group of corpses. Chang Peng sighed, but in his heart, he admired Lin En even more. Just because Lin En made a judgment earlier, in fact, this time the defensive blocking point is also the last line of defense. Lin En did not arrange much in N City at all, but most of the resources were put into the woods. On the one hand, Lin En's own guesses and judgments, naturally, the occasional simulation confirmation in the past few days. The group of corpses headed towards the seemingly peaceful woods in a mighty manner. Countless zombies are crowded, not just walking past. Instead, he began to use his teeth, arms, tearing, and pushing and manipulating the trees in front of him. Some mutant zombies were secretly mixed in, and for a while, the sound of trees falling one after another emerged. They turned out to be really planning, so they passed by while opening the road, not even letting go of the trees. This group of zombies is like locusts, whistling every tree, never rushing in, and the number of mutant zombies is not many. Linen could judge that they were actually testing. I hope to see if Linen will react to their behavior, such as revealing the danger hidden in the forest in advance. In this regard, Linen said, "That's very good. He is not in a hurry, so let the zombies slowly advance. If they really intend to knock down every single tree, it will take a day or two for them to reach End City. Not to mention the damage would be even greater. You procrastinate, let's see who has spent more." In this regard, Linen expressed that he is happy to see it happen. In the distance, he moved with his thoughts. Countless flying mutant animals reappeared, dropping bombs on the corpses from time to time, blowing them up in pieces. Procrastination. The longer you drag, the more offensive I can launch. As a result, the zombies fell into a difficult multiple-choice question, the slow and leisurely road, that is, to continue to be the target. After a short thought, the zombies were heartbroken. Rushed. The corpses were no longer entangled in the threat, and Wu Yui rushed directly into the forest and scattered widely. With so many trees, even if you have a trap and use ordinary zombies to open the way first, you will only die a small part of it. The commander of the zombies thought so, but what is the result? Whoosh. A vine man suddenly protruded from the ground. The next moment, a zombie was dragged and fell into the ground. After that, a piece of ground was directly sunken, and there were countless ferocious lantern flowers that seemed to be more than 2 meters high, hidden in it. They waved the vines and captured the zombies, and if they bit them, they would instantly turn the zombies into liquid acid in their mouths. Some zombies took the initiative to go down and gnaw at these plants, but for a while, they couldn't even bite the branches and leaves, and they could only hear a sour crunch. Linen dared to use this plant as a trap. How could these plants be broken when touched? This kind of mutant plant is a somewhat failed, lethality is ordinary, but with the ravine, it can also be used as a good trap. Bang. A muffled sound. A huge tree suddenly slapped the side like a draft, like a fly swatter. Once the zombie is flattened, its branches and leaves will bite the zombie's body like a snake and shrink back, and it can be absorbed in 10 seconds, replenishing its stamina, and even making it stronger. This fly swatter tree. To be honest, this style of painting is a little strange, and it is also a failure, but the occasional appearance of such a tree really makes the zombies a bit at a loss. In addition, Linen is outside the forest, and there are many semi-finished products, experimental objects, or simply deformed mutant plants that are made by mistakes. These mutated plants are far more frightening than zombies. Linen flew up to the sky and looked at them, only to think that in the woods, a group of demons were dancing wildly at this moment. It was a purgatory scene. Countless trees twisted like demons, engulfing countless zombies, and their resistance looked weak and pale. Those ordinary zombies were not at all the opponents of these mutant plants that became more and more brave. It can only be smashed, knocked flying, cut into 2 or 3 pieces, turned into a pool of liquid, or twisted like a rag doll. In addition, from time to time, mice the size of wild boars suddenly burst out of the ground, swarming up, and grabbing a small number of zombies into the ground, leaving only a few deep pits that could not be seen clearly. There are also some low-level mutant monkeys gleefully pointing at the zombies on the trees, occasionally grabbing a stone and smashing the head of a zombie, and then roaring and dragging the zombie away. They are the bottom of the food chain, generally nothing. Opportunity to eat. In addition, there are birds passing through the forest from time to time, dogs and cats barking, and the sound of thundering mines. Linen looked at it, and always felt that these zombies looked a little pitiful. As the corpse tide went deeper and deeper, the blocking force in the woods became stronger and stronger. But the closer they are to the dawning refuge, the stronger the Linen mutant plants are, because most of the plants near the dawning refuge are already high-quality products that Linen thinks are good. The fighting ability and potential of these high-quality mutant plants are far more powerful than the peripheral mutant plants, and they don't look so demonic. The tree-shaped mutant plants, the lowest of which are more than 5 meters tall, no longer look as bizarre as before. Of course, a plant that can move is scary enough in itself. The zombies have to let more and more mutant zombies begin to participate, otherwise, relying on ordinary zombies, it is impossible to complete the characters that open the way. Even though some ordinary zombies will rush past due to the attack speed limit of the plant itself, if the corpse cannot gather and rush past 363, it will be useless at all. The mutant zombies have the power to fight back against various mutant plants, and even those with outstanding abilities can be said to be able to handle it with ease. The zombies gradually stabilized their positions and began to move forward steadily. Although the price paid was still invincible, it was enough to give them hope. Intel. A pile of black, stone-like projectiles suddenly flew from the sky, and flew from a distance, breaking a mutant zombie. Just like a signal, the next moment, the sky seemed to light up with black dots one after another. These black stones, each of which was only about 1 meter in size, but under the parabola, were extremely accurate. Obviously there is no perspective in the jungle, but these stones seem to know the location of each zombie. Even if one misses, the subsequent rain of stones will cause the zombies to suffer heavy losses in an instant. Even some of Lin An's mutant plants were directly smashed by the unfortunate cause. One can imagine the power of these flying stones. Lin An stood above the sky and nodded with satisfaction. Just relying on the plant's output by melee combat, the power is too low. It can only block the progress of the corpse tide, but the lethality is still limited. Therefore, Lin An has always been thinking about making these mutant plants kill the monsters as much as possible. As a result, his Stone No. 1 Ancient War Tree became the most lethal long-range unit he had mutated. At this moment, he looked down, only looking at the end of the forest, almost placed outside the wall of the shelter, row after row, very neatly formed into a remote formation. The trees of these stone-throwing No. 1, inspired by Warcraft, look very similar. The whole tree has only 2 branches like human arms, and a string of black fruits grows on the back of the head. These fruits can be directly stimulated with energy, and with their ability, one can grow in about 10 seconds. Those dead zombies were not all dragged into the ground by rats and eaten. In fact, a large number of zombie corpses had been transported from underground to the vicinity of this group of mutant plants by Lin An through the rats. This also means that if it is to fight with the current corpse tide, it is impossible for Lin An's Stone No. 1 to lack ammunition. Moreover, Lin An also tried to pull these mutant plants into his own spiritual network. Facts have proved that once these mutant plants have produced wisdom, they can also produce spiritual power. Although they are worse than living things, they can also enter the spiritual power network. After entering the spiritual network, Lin An can let other mutant plants in the front row also link in, and use their spiritual power as the coordinate to locate the stone-throwing No. 1. This is also the reason why, even when the group of trees can't have vision, they can still throw accurately. The parabola they throw is very high, which brings a longer throwing range, and also makes the stone have a stronger momentum under the blessing of inertia. One stone-like fruit was thrown out, the bullets were used up, and it only took 10 seconds to refill. Not to mention, there are thousands of stones No. 1, when facing opponents like zombies, almost every stone throw can knock over at least several zombies. If they were directly smashed to death, it would be fine. The end is either eaten by other mutant plants on the spot, or taken away by mice and sent to the No. 1 stone sling to replenish bullets. For a time, the rumbling sound was incessant, and the earth trembled, as if an earthquake had struck suddenly. The arrogance of the zombies also resounded throughout the forest. Only then did the corpse tide realize the sinister nature of Lin An's mind. Now most of the corpse tide has penetrated into the forest, and now it is impossible to retreat. I can only bite the bullet and make a choice that even zombies feel heartache. No matter the cost, rush out quickly, and we must get rid of those mutant plants that can throw rocks. So, the corpse riot started. Countless zombies rushed into the forest desperately, including mutant zombies. All began to rush forward regardless of the cost, trying to get in and open the way. The battle, outside the city, for the first time thoroughly entered into a fever. Lin An alone is obviously not enough to put out the fire, and as a last resort, the evolutionaries also put on the field again. Even Simba, Jin Yu, and even Harry joined the battlefield. It's going to keep the corpses in the forest. The herds of animals galloped, the voices of people shouted, and the sound of explosions and falling trees could be heard endlessly. Even Lin An's side was injured. The evolutionary person who is good at transforming into various weapons is not suitable for fighting in the forest. One accident, almost half of his body was corroded by a mutant zombie. If he hadn't turned his body into a steel weapon in time, he would have been completely dead at this moment. Fortunately, Qi Tian was nearby. Qi Tian's speed was extremely fast, and his reaction speed was astonishingly fast. He took him out of the battlefield at the first time, thus avoiding the arrival of death. Then, as if it were a signal, the rest of the evolutionary people were more or less in trouble. Even Zhang Qingshui was accidentally knocked away by a mutant zombie, knocking over a tree, and then stopped. Fortunately, she was only slightly injured. She flew into the sky, the black flying sword fluttered, and after giving the head of the mutant zombie that had attacked, she withdrew from the battlefield and took a breath. There is only one reason for this situation: the corpse group is also desperate. Those high-level mutant zombies who were originally sitting in the rear and would never shoot easily, also participated in the battle. Lin An made a decisive decision and issued an order: safety first. There is still the last line of defense, and it's not time to fight. Some evolutionary people under great pressure heard the words and became more cautious. However, this is not the case for the mutant animals, especially Simba, which is covered with black lines at the moment, and the black light implanted by it has made it stronger at this moment. Injured? It's okay, eat back. The swallowing instinct of black light is almost their nature. As the battle became more and more brave, the zombies and Linan's men stood in a stalemate in the forest until the night. In the dark night, several figures sparsely walked out of the forest swaying. Linan, who had been sitting on the city wall facing the forest, closed his eyes and opened them instantly, looking indifferently into the distance. In the end, it was still Zhao Zombie. Linan gave an order and did not hesitate. The evolutionary and mutant animals who were still fighting in the forest withdrew one after another. Just outside the city, the slingers, who were still flying and bumping into each other, also stopped their movements, and swaying, they broke free from the shackles of the soil and stood up. Then, staggeringly, he walked towards the open door of the shelter. On the city wall, the searchlights crackled into pieces, and the next moment, the light as bright as day filled the surroundings. Outside the tall fence surrounded by forests, there is almost no blind spot for vision. The last line of defense in the forest was still supporting, and all kinds of tall and powerful mutant plants did their best to stop the corpse. Without the support of distant firepower, their pressure will be even greater. The attack of the zombies is getting faster and faster, and regardless of the cost. The commander seems to have made up his mind. This time, let's go all out. Never give humans a chance to breathe. The fact is also true, if you take a breather, it may be impossible for the corpse tide to pose a threat to the gathering place. Fire! Someone shouted. The next moment, on the city wall 7 or 8 meters high. The gunfire roared again. Pay attention to the burst shot. The weapon that Director Lin has strengthened, it is impossible to shoot in the air when aimed, so please pay attention to it. Save bullets if you are not sure. Don't panic. They haven't come yet. A burst of shouts made people concentrate. Don't be afraid, we still have traps and obstacles. Even if they rush out of the forest, they can't rush over directly. Transfer a high-speed machine gun that Director Lin has strengthened. There are a lot of them here. This is too much. Priority is given to finding mutant zombies to fight. Don't accidentally hurt. Don't accidentally hurt. Watch out for mutant animals. Buy time for Stone Sling number 1 to withdraw. The cries were endless. Linan just stood calmly at the front of the city and observed. About half an hour later, the wobbly Stone number 1 finally returned to the shelter. The mutant animals that were still procrastinating in the forest also quickly withdrew to the sanctuary as if they were amnesty. The high fence and 4 gates fell at the same time, and the entire sanctuary was completely sealed off. Under the moonlight, several flares suddenly lifted into the air. The corpse tide near the south gate has begun to charge. Don't be nervous. Pay attention to the distance. All the roars were drowned out by the sound of gunfire. The final defensive battle has officially started. The zombies calmly amazed some humans after they realized that they finally rushed out of the woods. The mutant zombies who opened the way quickly stopped, turned back, and continued to clear the route. And the ordinary zombies did not rush forward, but waited until more zombies came from behind, and after a certain number of them had reached a certain number, they let go of their footsteps and rushed from a distance. After they have gone through a bloody elimination, the rest will either be completely disabled, or they will rely on the flesh and blood of their former companions to gain a little evolution again. Running at this moment, the speed turned out to be a little faster. Linan watched their running gestures, and for a while, he thought of a movie, Zombie World War, that he had watched. The zombies inside are also facing the high walls and firepower of human beings, but relying on the terrifying speed and quantity, they are abruptly stacked over the wall and wiped out the human beings. Linan was indifferent. The battle at the moment had nothing to do with him, and if he went out casually, he might have blocked the gun for the zombies instead. Lack of mass destruction, he may be able to come and go freely in the corpse tide, but if you want to count on one person to kill them all, you should rest. The zombies calmly used cannon fodder to open the way, and used the corpses to charge forward with the firepower all the way. Not surprisingly, there are still countless deep pits and traps left outside the city, and they soon had to start over the mountains. But with previous experience, they already have skilled fire pit skills. It is no longer a reckless posture full of corpses, but a huge group of corpses turned into several strands. According to several routes, just use the corpses to build a bridge, and let the corpse tide cross the corpse bridge, the potholes. Linan, at this rate, they can rush over in an hour. Chang Peng asked Linan nervously. Linan just nodded lightly, and then calmly said, I have a way. How to face the zombies and bridge the pit? Naturally, it's better to let the bridge disappear. Just looking at the back, suddenly another black stone rain flew up. But it is strange, mixed with some green fruits. Returning to the sanctuary to reroute, the Slinger one again began to function. And this time, they were nothing but throwing stones. There are also some that look a little different from the normal Sling one, to be precise, the Sling 2, that is dark green in color. The biggest difference between these Sling number 2 and its first generation is that the bullets are different. Throwing number 1 can only spawn the most basic bullet fruits. These fruits are just astonishingly heavy, which is conducive to being thrown, but has no special effect. However, Stone Sling number 2 can take longer to brew a bullet with a more special effect, such as corrosion bombs. Some green fruits flew high into the sky and landed from afar. Unmistakably, under the command of Lin En's spiritual power, they smashed towards the corpse bridge in the pothole. These green fruits exploded into a pool of green pus when they hit the ground. These liquids are extremely corrosive, almost like boiling water falling on a snowdrift. In an instant, the zombie corpses that had filled the potholes melted into a big hole. It only takes 3 or 4 fruits to fall, and the bridge filled by the zombies with the corpses will disappear. The green acid liquid fell into the originally burning flames in the tunnel, and after it gave off a pungent smell, the flames instantly rushed high into the sky, and walls of fire rose up outside the city almost for a while. Not only that, but there are speed reduction bullets, such as ice blue. Once it falls, a piece of ground will be turned into a freezing liquid with cold air, and the zombies will become sluggish when they approach, and even frostbite will occur, including corrosive gas bombs with the widest range of lethality. This kind of bullet is probably mutated by Lin En, and it has the widest range of mutated bullets. If one goes down, there will be terrifying poisonous gas within a radius of 100 meters in 7 seconds. These poisonous gases do not require you to breathe in contact. As long as you touch them, they will fester. The zombies are like paper paste, running and running in the smoke. It fell apart. Of course, this poisonous gas also has the disadvantage of being easily volatile. Basically, it will dissipate in 7 seconds. It may not be an advantage, so as not to be blown away by the wind, but it will destroy one's own people. The zombies fell like they were cutting wheat. The momentum of advancement has finally slowed down. The people on the city wall couldn't help but cheer up a lot. The gunshots continued. An anxious tug of war began again. In the midst of the long battle, the morning came unexpectedly. Sunshine flooded the city. The zombies, finally, approached where the city wall was. Last mile. 1 kilometer, which is a somewhat vague concept. But, if the warriors on the walls come and talk to you, it's as if it's close at hand. Once those zombies broke through the last ditch a kilometer away, leading to the road under the high wall, but it was almost unobstructed. At their speed, running with all their strength, it only took 2 minutes to rush down to the city wall. Every now and then, a fish that slipped through the net crawls out of the pit and rushes towards the wall, causing many people's hearts to pound. Even if they knew that those monsters had reached the city, it would not be easy to climb up in the face of the 7 to 8 meter high wall of size. However, the fear that zombies bring to human beings is still too deep. Especially those survivors, who were lucky enough to wait for rescue, but also witness the damage caused by zombies to human beings. At this moment, facing the menacing zombies, the distance is getting closer, and the hands of many survivors are shaking. Those monsters that are only 60 to 70% similar to humans, at this moment, because they are constantly being attacked, one by one has long since lost their human appearance. Kill! Kill! Someone shouted, and some of them were red-eyed. You must know that, except for some lucky ones, many survivors themselves killed zombies in the early days. Even some people, the first zombie to kill is the original friend, love, relative. The blood feud is not shared by the sky. Not only are zombies instinctively hostile to human beings, but human beings also hate this group of monsters who have lost their homes and are precarious. At this moment, the people on the city wall have been fighting for several hours. If you are tired, you can only rest for an hour or two and let people take turns. After that, you have to alternately rest and replenish firepower. The bullets were used up like a flood, and Yin Xiaoxiao, who was in charge of logistics, had to raise her voice. Pay attention to the consumption of bullets. The zombies were still firmly carrying the hail of bullets and rushed to the city. When the first zombie rushed to the wall, it raised its head bewilderedly, and crawled around with its hands and feet, but it couldn't find a spot to climb. The vines on the wall seemed to be the best climbing tools, but when the zombies touched the vines attached to the wall, the vines seemed to come alive. The zombie was suddenly torn into pieces, like a giant mouth swallowing it, and the other vines seemed to be activated in an instant. Suddenly, the entire wall seemed to become a huge living thing, and countless vines moved towards it. Swinging out, countless spikes protrude outwards. The original wall of the shelter seemed to have turned into a huge hedgehog in an instant. The hedgehog's thorns will also attack autonomously. Once the zombie tries to climb, the thorns will retract, and the next moment will change position to stab, and even swallow. And as the zombies were eaten by the wall seemed to be getting stronger little by little. Okay. I don't know which zombie suddenly let out a roar. The next moment, Lin and keenly observed that the speed of the whole group of corpses soared again. Even in the original 5-meter wide pothole, some zombies tried to jump directly over, which is basically impossible for zombies, but at this moment, it seems that their power has suddenly increased greatly. For a time, the speed of this group of zombies was even close to the speed of ordinary humans, and they ran wild as if they were flying. The zombies that only occasionally appeared by the wall broke through several defense lines in the blink of an eye and rushed towards the wall. Lin said nothing and threw a flare. The moment the signal bomb exploded. Fire coverage. A series of shouts made the demoman who had been prepared to take the last projectile. Countless grenades swirled and flew down. On the side of the city wall, waves of air and blood rained. Even some warriors standing by the wall had to hurriedly turn back. The blood of zombies is infectious to ordinary people. The grenade exploded far. Fire! Lin shouted loudly. The next moment, the fuel is dumped. Countless flames spread under the wall. However, not only did the vines on the wall not burn because of this, on the contrary, they became more and more violent. How could Lin not consider that this wall covered with plants, if burned, would make humans a part of the oven? These plants are all fireproof. Even if a small part is burned, they will directly abandon that part of the burning part and throw it away. Instead, the burning zombies were shoved into the wall without hesitation, and the vines and soil were mixed and quickly divided into pieces, blocking the air, without oxygen. Grow out. On the contrary, the zombies were constantly burning underground. Even if they rushed to the wall and tried their best to jump, they could only jump 2 or 3 meters high. Remember that high jump and long jump are not the same thing. Moreover, there are vines blocking mutant zombies. Someone shouted. A black flying sword suddenly swept through the air, and several mutant zombies that jumped up became fragments in the air. Every evolutionary is just extremely cautious at this moment and did not make a move. Instead, staring at the abnormality in the corpse tide, mutant zombies are their opponents. The herd can't hold back at this moment. For Lin, their lives, although somewhat indifferent, are indeed less important than those of human beings. Many mutant animals have been kept outside by Lin. At this moment, they are constantly harassing the corpse tide. The battle damage has reached about 1.5. However, facing the corpse tide, they still paid a heavy price. It hurts to watch Lin. This is all meat. It's gone after being whistled by zombies. Simba roared from time to time on the city wall. Although its spiritual impact could not touch Lin, it was extremely effective against zombies. The mental power is dedicated to picking up mutant zombies, and with a single rush, a mutant zombie can basically stay in place like a lost soul. After that, any bullet can take away the life of the zombie. In addition, Liu Yao, Yan Shi, Zheng Li and others are also fighting desperately. Someone like Zheng Li, who is not good at attacking with a single unit, simply continued to focus on the corpse tide. She kept controlling the ground to tear and tumble, engulfing the zombies one by one, and creating one after another as deep as a moat. The pit stops the zombies from approaching. Chang Peng is probably the one who abuses vegetables the fastest. With a push of his hand, after taking off his sunglasses, the fiery red laser can directly penetrate a distance of 1 kilometer. Although he can't scan in a straight line due to the angle problem, he can see ordinary eyes wherever he can. The zombies are basically directly divided into 2 sections. He sweeps it every few minutes, which basically relieves a lot of stress. Found it. Lin is not standing there in a daze. In fact, since the zombies started to accelerate, he realized that there are some mutant zombies with the ability to add buff. He has to find the zombie that can increase the zombie's ability. Otherwise, the zombies only need to take a ladder 3 or 4 meters high under the city. Maybe there are mutant zombies who can have the opportunity to jump up. Once there is a monster on the city wall, the balance of the battle will be tilted. For most humans, as long as the zombie is injured, it is no different from death. And with the help of Tianyantong, Lin finally locked the target. And not only that. Because, what he discovered, the location of the mutant zombies, or in other words, the mutant zombies themselves, turned out to be in an invisible state. This made Lin realize something instantly. He finally found the most critical group of mutant zombies. To be on the safe side, after 12 o'clock today, he specially left 2 simulations to no avail. It's time. He quickly simulated his grasp of this action in his mind. After getting a positive answer, suddenly going higher into the sky. The next moment, go straight out of the city. The goal is to point at the group of invisible mutant zombies. To capture a thief, you must first capture the king. Draw. Lin En's sudden dispatch, no surprise, attracted the attention of many zombies. In fact, he just stood still on the city wall, and let many mutant zombies throw the mouse, or in other words, where he stood on the wall, the pressure on the wall would be much less. Just because those mutant zombies are attacking around Lin En. What about the four walls? There is always a chance to avoid it, right? At this moment, he fluttered and flew, not only attracted the attention of many mutant zombies, but even the eyes of the soldiers in the city could not help but look at him. And he just waved his wings. In the next moment, it disappeared suddenly from the sky, leaving only a gust of wind, and when it reappeared, it had already penetrated deep into the corpse tide. Countless zombies were like being blown up by a tornado. The black seedling knife in his hand became several times larger in the blink of an eye, and when it was swung, it was really a 10-meter broadsword, and when it swept in a circle, countless zombies broke into two pieces. Lin En didn't linger. His eyes were clear. The golden light in his eyes seemed to have a little mist. The aura around him was constantly being absorbed, and he was motivated by his merciless all-out efforts. Just like turning on the acceleration mode, these auras began to increase his physical fitness, and at the same time, he also adjusted his various talents to the limit that he could play at present. Including black light. At this moment, the black light swayed and followed behind him, like tails. After swaying, they suddenly smashed to the ground, as if there were a few more feet, making him rampage like a chariot. The black light fluid spread all over his body, as if he had put on a thick layer of carapace, and even seemed to have a metal-like reflection in the sunlight. The twinkling golden light in his eyes made him look like an Iron Man in a steel suit. It's just that this Iron Man doesn't rely on equipment. Boom. A sound like an explosion came out. It wasn't that something exploded, but Lin En at the moment, stepping on the ground with every step, exploded with a muffled sound. Countless zombies are like being hit by a dump truck, and whenever they touch it, they twist and fly to the side. Where is he going? There were some doubts in the minds of the soldiers watching Lin En. But then, when Lin En suddenly jumped high, the Miao Dao in his hand became longer again, and countless black light tails swayed like bullets and stretched out into the distance, before people suddenly heard a strange metal collision sound. When countless flames burst, like hot sparks when iron was struck, and after a space warping that seemed to be nothing, more than a dozen mutant zombies suddenly appeared in the group of corpses. Someone couldn't help but scream in surprise. There are still invisible mutant zombies. My God, if these mutant zombies approached by stealth, wouldn't they be unable to find them at all, and they would be boarded on the city wall? They were afraid, but they couldn't help but hold their breath, widened their eyes, and looked at Lin En outside the city. If someone hadn't kept shouting and firing, I'm afraid even the corpse tide below that was still approaching would have been forgotten for a while. There is no reason for him. Only because of the strength and attitude that Lin En showed in an instant. Shocking. Just watching a black light flash, the next moment, Lin En and the mutant zombies seemed to have disappeared at the same time. Instead, countless black and red lines enveloped the entire space. The fire was flickering, and it seemed that Lin En's seedling knife could be slashed and sparked. Okay. After an angry roar of zombies, a huge psychic shock suddenly appeared, like the Shinra Tianzhong of the reincarnation eye in Hokage, and a huge hole appeared out of thin air. The black light behind Lin En blocked his body, and he was pushed backward almost abruptly and flew upside down from the ground for about 5 meters, one layer shallower. Countless dust was pushed flying, covering the sky and the sun, instantly making people who were concerned about Lin En lose their sight. But then, they suddenly heard another roar of the zombies. Only this time, compared to the terrifying anger before, it seems, with incredible and fear. When the dust settled, people could see clearly that in just a few seconds, on the long tail of black light swaying behind Lin En, a trophy had already been hung. It was a mutant zombie that was struggling, but gradually lost its strength. As this mutant zombie was completely swallowed by Lin En's black light and died, the rest of the mutant zombies nearby were extremely angry and disturbed. Ow 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 ow. After a long growl, under the incredible gaze of everyone, a terrifying huge figure suddenly appeared. 10 meters, 20 meters, 30 meters. A terrifying zombie that was almost several times taller than the wall appeared out of thin air. This huge zombie looks hideous. It seems to have only bones and muscles. It looks like the giant of armor in a certain comic, which is generally unforgettable. Lin En just didn't even look at the giant zombie, and continued to attack the mutant zombies frantically by its side, never allowing one to escape. This huge zombie has a clear target. It also doesn't even look at Lin En, and steps forward, pointing directly at the high wall of the shelter. As long as it hits the high wall, it will be a nightmare to greet humans the next moment. What to do? Someone shouted in horror. Every step of this giant zombie is a distance of tens of meters. At this moment, he takes a step and walks faster and faster. It seems that it only takes a dozen steps to come to the front. Hiss. An equally fierce roar sounded from the city head. An incomparably huge orangutan jumped out of it, jumped directly from the shelter, jumped over the city wall, and jumped outside the city. Its body is also constantly changing, 10 meters, 20 meters, 30 meters. In the blink of an eye, an equally terrifying giant silverback gorilla also appeared outside the city wall. This gorilla was covered with black blood red silk threads, and when countless zombies were trampled on by him, it also made it look more and more terrifying, with an ominous aura. This is the silverback that has never been shot. The reason why Linen kept it all the time was that he didn't let the guy who is the most suitable for clearing up miscellaneous soldiers in large-scale battlefields take action. Its purpose? Just to prevent giant zombies from stealing the house. Fortunately, this huge zombie didn't have a chance to sneak in at all, and its whereabouts were exposed because of Linen's early action. This also makes Silverback no longer need to hide himself. Through the black light, Silverback, who made himself stronger, has become more perverse in character, and his strength has also been greatly improved. Perhaps it was because it was originally the most simple and rude player of strength and physique, but it was very compatible with Haiguang, both of whom liked to eat more and grow faster. The violent posture of the Silverback is like a giant beast from ancient times, running wildly all the way, shaking the ground with a roar. Countless zombies couldn't even block the road at all, and they were smashed into a puddle of mud. The gigantic zombie never expected to meet an opponent similar in size to himself. It was obviously stunned for a moment, and the price of the stun was the Silverback that jumped up and pressed it to the ground with the attitude of Taishan. With just one punch, the zombie roared in anger, and his face collapsed a little. As a result, the two behemoths rolled and fought on the ground with a very primitive attitude. You punched me and kicked each other. It seemed slow, but almost every punch shook the ground. Countless zombies are considered bloody mildew. The two monsters can be crushed to death by a single roll. For a time, even the defensive pressure outside the wall almost disappeared. The battle between two huge monsters, ordinary zombies are not allowed to approach at all. And what about Linen? At this moment, he was just holding the Meow Dao among the corpses, and looked into the distance with a deep gaze. Beside him, to be precise, there are dozens of mutant zombie parts hanging on the tail of black light, but those mutant zombies have disappeared. In other words, became part of the black light. Vaguely, a spiritual force seemed to collide with him. Linen's all-like mental power collided with him without hesitation. At the moment of the touch, each other clearly felt the intention of killing each other. After a slight dizziness, Linen was better than the other, and the mental power was torn away unwillingly. After that, the entire corpse group seemed to have suddenly lost command. The only mutant zombies left turned around and ran away, only the stupid ordinary zombies, attracted by the sound and the breath of human beings. However, the speed and strength, including the way of attack, have become completely mindless. They jumped into the pit one by one, or foolishly approached the Silverback, and were directly crushed. Linen raised his arms, grinned, and his voice was smiling. Victory. The soldiers who watched all of this seemed like a lifetime away, and they couldn't even believe it. Until they found out that the zombies who had attacked fiercely and even rushed to the top of the wall at one point could only now stare blankly at the wall, crawling and jumping randomly. The biggest threat, those mutant zombies, also disappeared. As Yinbei raised his right fist, he suddenly smashed the head of the huge mutant zombie in front of him, making a loud noise. In the shelter, only from small to big sounded a very exciting, fanatical cheers. Won. Victory, over, humanity must win. We won. Cheers like a tsunami of mountains and tsunamis. As if shaking the sky. For a time, the sun scatters all over the world, as if everything has color again. Linen stood where he was, and the black light consciously drove out the ordinary zombies around him. He just jumped his eyes and looked into the distance. The commander of the mutant zombies turned out to be in this direction. Without saying a word, he started the simulation. This is his second mock today. The result of this simulation made Linen's face change slightly. Just because, at the end of this simulation, once again, he saw 3 words that he hadn't seen for a long time, a little annoying. You are dead. Linen didn't say a word. He didn't even look at his simulation information carefully, but after a brief glance, he, like everyone else, began to clean up the large number of ordinary zombies left around the shelter. Ordinary zombies without command became iron again. As long as an evolutionary like Linen made some big noises, they even forgot to attack the city wall, and instead rushed towards Linen. The Silverback was biting at the giant zombies and having fun outside the shelter. The time for it to grow is not endless, and it is a rare situation to abuse vegetables like this. At this moment, Linen does not need to say anything, so he shouts and shouts. going to trouble finding zombies. This is especially true of other mutant animals. The one who hits against the wind is called a suffocating and uncomfortable. Without Lin En's more orders, this group of mutant animals started hunting as if they were flying. The corpse group without command can't deal with this group of mutant animals at all. They are good at cooperation and extremely fast. At this moment, this group of zombies is in chaos, and even their own people will bump into each other, just like a beach of scattered sand. Disperses at a touch. A large number of zombies have been reduced to poor food, and mutant plants and mutant animals have started a carnival. The mutant zombies with brains didn't stop at all, and they ran wild at the moment of retreat. Lin En didn't bother to chase, just cooperated with the shelter and started to clean up the surroundings. At least, tonight, let the big guys sleep peacefully. The defensive battle that lasted for several days was almost stopped for a second. At this moment, let alone an ordinary person, even Lin En was a little emaciated and wanted to rest. He hasn't rested a day in the past few days, and his spirit is so concentrated that Tianyantong is almost useless. At this moment to relax, he almost let Haiguang do it himself, and he was just walking on the battlefield, disguisedly relaxed. Almost an hour to clean up. The sound of the bullets finally stopped. The smell of gunpowder and blood permeated the air for a long time, almost making many people feel as if they have lost their sense of smell. Black smoke was floating in the sky, and countless flames were burning, making crackling sounds from time to time. The group of rats is actively wandering. This is simply the best tonic feast for them. Countless zombies can make their group expand rapidly. Not only can the original number of mice be recovered, but it may even usher in an expansion period, reaching a number of more than 100,000. Near the sea, there are always some naive murlocs who come up to feed them, and they will never starve to death. Even this group of mice can be vegetarian, just to fill their stomachs. It is not difficult. Lin En returned to the shelter. The 4 gates opened, and the soldiers went out to sweep and clean the battlefield, while the survivors were already in a carnival. They laughed loudly and hugged every partner who also had a smile on their faces. Yuan Long, who was currently in charge of the shelter, did not stop it, but with a smile on his face, he commanded the soldiers loudly to let the shelter re-enter. Working status. Of course, the most important thing today is to rest. The reopened bathhouse, canteen snacks, and even some drinks can be said to be snacks in luxury stores, and they are all included in the meal. Some people may fall back to sleep, but more people hope that there is a way to release the joy and excitement in their hearts. Lin En doesn't care about it, or rather, even though most people are now able to relax and enjoy the first stress-free day in this period of time. But there are many things he needs to think about. Lin En, where are you going? Lu Yao's voice sounded from behind. Lin En turned his head. A smile appeared on his originally expressionless face. I want to go back and have a rest. Her face was black at the moment, and she didn't know why it was stained. She looked like a tabby cat. Lu Yao realized Lin En's eyes, and smeared her face in a panic. As a result, her hands became darker, and her face became even darker. Oops. Why didn't you tell me? She glared at Lin En with a coquettish gaze, pointed to her face, and a pool of cold water appeared in her hands. She shivered and wiped her hands and face. Her progress is also visible to the naked eye. Lin En smiled and stretched out his hand. The black light brushed on her face like a small brush, and then the black light spit around casually. Although it felt a little weird, the cleaning effect was really good. Lu Yao grabbed Lin En's hand and didn't move, pressed her face tightly, smiling like a flower. We won. Lin En smiled. We won. She couldn't hold back, and jumped directly into Lin En's arms, jumping and jumping. Lin En smiled and cooperated with her, holding her for a few laps. With a light touch on her forehead, Lin En raised her head. Yes, we won. Seemingly aware that Lin En's interest was not as high as hers, Lu Yao let go of her hand, puffed up her face, and looked suspiciously for a while before guessing what he was thinking. Her smile became softer, and she held Lin En's hand, her voice soft and lively. Don't think so much, relax yourself today, the difficulties are there anyway. With you here, I can definitely beat you, she looked confident. Lin En. In the distance, Zhang Qingshui's voice went from far to near. She landed unrestrainedly from the sky, and several small black swords turned into the size of palms and landed in the sword bag on the back waist, looking like a sword fairy full of wine. Lu Yao let go of his hand unconsciously, put his back behind him, and turned around staggeringly. I'm going to help. She didn't finish her sentence. Zhang Qingshui sighed, and hooked her arm in a big sister's manner. Where are you going? Today, let's rest together. Lin En's smile became brighter and brighter, but Zhang Qingshui rolled her eyes at him. Let's go. Let's have dinner together. You come too. Where's Xiao Xiaopao? Yin Xiaoxiao came running from a distance, and heard this sentence from a distance. I'm here. It was rare for the four of them to gather together. Lin thought about it and gave up the idea of resting alone. He also wanted to be quiet with the girls and relax for a while without thinking about anything, even if it was only for one night. We won't go to the cafeteria anymore. With Xiao Xiao around, we'll go outside and eat it by ourselves. How about the seaside? I haven't had time to see the sea here. Zhang Qingshui suggested. Yin Xiaoxiao glanced at Lin involuntarily, her face flushed, and she agreed. I can do it, it's good, very good. Zhang Qingshui and Lu Yao looked at them both with strange eyes. Yin Xiaoxiao didn't say a word, she shrank behind Lin, but her hand wrapped around his arm, not at all worried like Lu Yao. Zhang Qingshui smiled helplessly, but she was no longer jealous, she just walked over to Lin and looked at him sideways. Lin understood, stretched out his hand, and held her. Lu Yao was stupid and didn't know what to do. Okay. Then let's go to the beach for barbecue today. Xiao Xiao, is your mental strength enough, or I'll get something from here and go. Lin smiled and watched Lu Yao's jokes. Yin Xiaoxiao was full of energy. Don't worry. I'm strong now. A barbecue is absolutely fine. Also, I still have a lot of this. Duan Xiaoxiao took out a small blue bottle. In her spare time, she will make some bizarre things by herself, blue medicine and blood medicine, and even some strange toys. Lin nodded, looked at Lu Yao, and teased, how about you come and hug me yourself? You. What nonsense are you talking about? She blushed. You didn't want it yourself. Lin smiled, his wings stretched behind his back, and a tail of black light rolled Lu Yao into his arms. Gone. The four sighed and flew into the sky. Zhang Qingshui used her psychic power to prop up the barrier, isolating the gust of wind caused by the speed. Yuan Long only heard a vague joke from Lin on the walkie-talkie, explaining that a few people were going on holiday today, and then, even the walkie-talkie was out of range. This guy. Really hard work. Yuan Long smiled and shook his head, but dealt with the affairs at hand more seriously. Lin is willing to believe him, how could he pull it off? Just half an hour later, the sound of waves. Lin slowly landed. The beach where Yin Xiaoxiao and Yin Xiaoxiao lost their clothes by accident appeared in front of her eyes. This seems to be the first time that Lin has come to the beach when the sun is full. It is no longer the deep feeling under the dark night. The ocean under the sun exudes sparkling waves, and the deep blue seawater and the blue sky set off against each other. Birds of some mutant animals occasionally fly across the sky, and they are responsible for checking the movements of the murlocs in the water and preventing them from suddenly going ashore to do things. Fortunately, this group of murlocs may be because the mutant animals on Lin's side have eaten a lot, and they are nocturnal. Cannot help but, the heart gave birth to a leisurely, calm mood. Lu Yao's resentful gaze interrupted Lin's mood. She lowered her head, and Lin realized that she forgot to retract her black light tail. At this moment, she was still in Lin's arms, like a kangaroo. He let go of the black light and hugged her to apologize, but Lu Yao broke free with a blushing face and embarrassment. I'm starving. Yesterday's 363 days and now, I can only take a sip of water. Xiao Xiao, it's up to you today, and now I really want to eat mutton skewers. Lu Yao looked at Lin being held by Yin Xiaoxiao with her right hand and Zhang Qingshui with her left hand, and angrily hugged Yin Xiaoxiao directly to prepare to eat and drink. Zhang Qingshui and Lin had very similar smiles on their faces. The two smiled at each other, as if they were old couples looking at their children. Zhang Qingshui seemed to feel the same way. She quickly restrained the smile on her face, wrinkled her nose, but didn't say anything. She just let go of her hand, walked to the beach, pushed away the seawater with her hand, and looked at it with novelty. Well, it seems that Xiao Zhang has never been to the beach before. Lin also suddenly felt a little tired for a while. His black light tail swept the sand, and then he sat down. After sitting for a while, he simply lay directly on the sand, closed his eyes, and listened to the rushing sound of the waves from time to time. It became more and more relaxed and quiet. Yin Xiaoxiao and Lu Yao laughed from time to time. Zhang Qingshui also seemed to help. The chatter of several people in the sea breeze brushed past their ears. It was like returning to a tourist attraction before the apocalypse, completely forgetting all the troubles. Lin gradually became a little sleepy. He just fell asleep like that. After an unknown amount of time, Lin opened his eyes and fell into a rare deep sleep until his face was rattled and something seemed to cross. Lu Yao grinned and put away her hands, and Lin noticed that she was carrying a brush in her hand. Don't even think about it, it must have been her tinkering with Yin Xiaoxiao. Then, what she did just now is naturally self-evident. Lin just smiled dotingly, and as soon as the black light passed over his face, the ink disappeared. Damn it. You're like this, I haven't had time to take a picture yet. Lu Yao let out a sigh and realized that Lin An suddenly reached out and grabbed her wrist. Little one, get ready. Lin An blinked at Yin Xiaoxiao, and then, with the sound of Lu Yao, grabbed the brush and scribbled on her face. Lu Yao's plea for forgiveness turned into incompetent rage, and finally his anger disappeared and pitifully asked his sisters for help. Zhang Qingshui pursed her lips and laughed, while Yin Xiaoxiao held the Polaroid camera she had conjured and took pictures continuously. Lu Yao was furious, jumped up, picked up the brush in Lin An's hand, and pounced towards the other two girls with open teeth and claws. So, Lin unconsciously took over Duan Xiao's camera and snapped a photo. The sound of chasing and laughter was endless, and the sparring among the evolutionaries was unusual. Zhang Qingshui was flying in the air, and Lu Yao raised ice walls one after another from the ground to hold her back. In the midst of the fight, with a smug face, she finally painted the faces of the other two girls black. Lin An just kept laughing, but in the end he provoked public anger. The girls rushed over and painted on his face. In the end, he just cooperated obediently, made a few shapes, and asked them to take a few pictures. The Polaroid spit out the photo, and a few people gathered together with a dark face, and laughed at each other. In the end, they each kept a few and collected them. Some pictures that were not taken well were thrown directly under the barbecue. After the fight, Lin An wiped his face one by one, and then the group calmed down and sat around the barbecue. The aroma of the barbecue was permeating, and there was no need to even control it. When Zhang Qingshui's mental strength moved, these barbecues voluntarily turned over. Yin Xiaoxiao turned out a cloth and put it on the beach, and even a box of beer and drinks with sweat on her forehead. Then he was out of breath, and under the pretext of recovering his mental strength, he leaned against Lin An and sat down, unwilling to move. Zhang Qingshui also unceremoniously sat on the other side of Lin An. Lu Yao was so bitter that she could only lean beside Zhang Qingshui and hug her tightly. The four held up the beer that was iced by Lu Yao. Cheers. The sun started to set at some point. The setting sun shines on the sea, the beauty is like an oil painting. The influence of beer on Lin An is minimal, but the girls are not like that. Although their alcohol consumption is much better, if they really let go of drinking and don't care about other things, they can still get drunk after all. From sunset to sunset, the moon rises to the middle. This guy Yin Xiaoxiao became excited to drink, and even turned into a draft beer barrel, the 10L kind. 3 girls, you have a cup and I have a cup. Whatever he wants to eat. Yin Xiaoxiao waved his hand and it's over. This guy seems to be more capable when he is drunk, and he doesn't look tired at all. Lin An smiled and mingled among the girls, echoing a few words from time to time, participating in the topic. To say what is the best thing about them being drunk, it must be that everyone is a lot more enthusiastic. Even Lu Yao, who was always embarrassed to hold hands in front of Zhang Qingshui, would come to Lin An from time to time on topic. The more girls played, the happier they became, and various games emerged one after another. Later, when I played Truth or Dare, I almost regretted it. I ask you. Choose the truth, and still, take a big risk. Duan Xiaoxiao said vaguely, but his tone was not as submissive as usual, but he became a little tougher. On the contrary, Zhang Qingshui became soft after drinking the wine. At this moment, she was biting her glass, and her white jade-like face had the color of the sunset. You ask first, and then talk about it. Okay. Yin Xiaoxiao shook the beer mug and narrowed her eyes. Then, suddenly asked. This question is inconvenient to describe, but Zhang Qingshui has only heard it once before raising her voice. Don't talk about it, I choose a big adventure. Oh. Then let me see how you and Lin An air. Duan Xiaoxiao smiled and leaned over to Lin An's side, followed by a moi on his neck without shyness. This does it. Zhang Qingshui blushed and looked at Lin An, not sure if it was more wine red or because of Yin Xiaoxiao. Well, what's so difficult about this? She closed her eyes and leaned over. Yin Xiaoxiao smiled. Is it all for him to take the initiative? Nonsense. Zhang Qingshui gritted her teeth, opened her eyes, and stuck Lin An's neck. Lin An narrowed his eyes, feeling very useful, but he always felt that the way things were going seems a bit weird. Facts once again proved that Lin An's sixth sense was unexpectedly accurate. In the 10th minute of the beginning of the Truth or Adventure game, Lu Yao was so frightened that he woke up with alcohol, ran all night, and ran back to the shelter alone. And on the beach, Lin An. All in all, it was a good time to relax. Zhang Qingshui flew away alone when she was conscious early in the morning. Lin An didn't stay there, only Yin Xiaoxiao didn't care. She was still by Lin An's side. When Zhang Qingshui left, she exclusively monopolized Lin An here. On the beach that the film is already somewhat familiar with, he acts like a spoiled child. Did you really get drunk yesterday? Lin suddenly became suspicious. Yin Xiaoxiao smiled and cupped him with her head, and her tone returned to her soft and cute look. Really? I've never drank so much alcohol, and now my head hurts. You overused your abilities yesterday. Lin rubbed her head dotingly. Yin Xiaoxiao smiled, her eyes narrowed into crescents. However, are you happy? What, happy or not? Lin stunned. Yin Xiaoxiao puffed up her face slightly and bit him. Huh. Happy. Lin was no longer pretending to be stupid, and immediately expressed that he was very happy. The two were tired of chatting and laughing together for a while, before Lin stretched out, retrieved the clothes she had almost lost again, and returned to the shelter. She went to work satisfactorily, while Lin had to be responsible for her indulgence, worked overtime, and began to watch the content of the simulation for the past 2 days. Especially, on the day when the zombies receded, he didn't watch the simulation carefully. His eyes fell on the simulation result. The 3 words seemed to sting his eyes. You are dead. Damn it, I can't believe it. Lin calmed down and looked at the simulated record carefully. October 5th. You lead your teammates in the direction of the spiritual power you feel, trying to find the real commander behind the zombies. October 6th. You found an abnormality near Y City. Judging by Tianyantong, there are many powerful mutant zombies approaching you. October 7th. You were in a tough battle. Several super mutant zombies with strengths only slightly inferior to you are besieging them. Thousands of mutant zombies are waiting for an opportunity. Your teammates start showing casualties. October 8th. Your battle almost destroyed the entire city. From the dark battle to the dawn, more and more mutant zombies appeared. You realized that the zombies recovered the corpse tide and regarded you as the only one. Target. Yin Xiaoxiao died first, and then more loved ones died in battle. You are heartbroken, but you are still determined to end it all. October 9th. While fighting, you tried to find out the leader behind these mutant zombies. Fortunately, you found it in a church in the Y domain. The bad news is that the situation inside the church is far worse than you might think. In addition to the mutant zombies, you actually saw the silhouettes of several mutants. Their auras are powerful, making you secretly startled. You may have an absolute chance of winning a duel, but at this moment, your fists are no match for 4 hands. You fought desperately, and in the end forced your life at the cost of serious injuries, but when you were ready to evacuate after you succeeded, a big hole suddenly exploded in your heart. Your black light was repairing desperately, but the countless beams almost turned you into a sieve. You reluctantly went back, only to see the zombie you killed, as if it had turned into a white ball of light and suddenly burst. You instantly lose consciousness. You are dead. Simulation ends. The number of simulation days this time is extremely limited. But the information is also surprisingly rich. Lin was silent, carefully observed it several times. Thoughtful. Success is success, but the price paid is too great. Not only the teammates suffered heavy casualties, but even himself may not be 100% sure to escape the self-destruction of the mutant zombie after his death. Is that a self-destruct, or a special ability? Lin doesn't know. But fortunately, he also successfully locked the location of the mutant zombies, and even discovered that the mutants seem to be colluding with the zombies. This is outrageous. What caused this to happen? Did it happen in the first place, or was it because of something I changed that led to this result? Lin pondered, and finally a trace of killing intent flashed in his eyes. The mutant zombie is probably still in Y City at this moment. He was silent and opened the simulator. The number of simulations after 12 o'clock last night has not been used. Before the simulation began, he suddenly moved. The points have not been used yet. In battles, milestones, how many are unlocked? With a thought, the simulator opened the milestone page. The words that appeared in it made Lin, who was a little unhappy because of the content of the mold, feel a lot more cheerful. Zombie, ancient enemy. Kill 10 million zombies, completed, and you can get 20,000 survival points after completion. Zombie extermination expert. Kill 100 million zombies, 17 million, 100 million, and you can get 100,000 survival points for completing it. Mutant zombie destroyer. Kill 1,000 mutated zombies, completed. You can get survival points reward after completion, 10,000. Zombie death omen. Kill 100 super mutant zombies with huge potential, 82 100ths, and you can get survival points reward, 10,000. Lin was stunned, only to kill more than 10 million. After thinking about it, it was almost the same. Many zombies were killed by themselves in the middle, and many were robbed of their heads by the people in the gathering place. Lin continued to look down, and his eyes gradually flashed with excitement. Not to his surprise, unlocked several hidden milestones. Moreover, the rewards for these milestones are extremely generous. The corpses are like a tide. Encountered by more than 10 million zombies, completed. get survival points reward, 1000. Tower defense game. Use traps to kill more than 100,000 zombies, completed, get survival points reward, 5000. Perfect defensive battle. Complete a defensive battle against a highly dangerous enemy with perfect battle damage. Completed, get survival points reward, 20,000. Savior. Save more than 100,000 human lives, completed, get survival points reward, 50,000. Killing intent has been decided. Never stop killing within 24 hours, completed, get survival points reward, 100,001. Bai Chi is alive. Kill more than 700,000 enemies through pit killing, completed, and get survival points reward, 10,000. Lin An's eyes were dazzled, and there were many dense ones, most of which only had a hidden multiplier reward of 1 or 2,000 points, which made him feel a little emotional for a while. Is this a corpse tide? This is so special, it's obviously a gift for Moneyboy. And when looking at his total points, Lin An couldn't help holding his breath for a while. Get rich. Current survival points, 141,557. Lin An's heart was pounding. If it is simply used to increase the simulation time, perhaps, he can simulate hundreds of days later. Once this idea appeared, it couldn't go away, but soon, Lin An calmed down. Do you really need to look that far? In fact, Lin An's current growth rate is basically the fastest rate that can be achieved at present. If he really sees a huge crisis after 100 days, without his new talent, if there is a situation of being crushed, then the final result may still be crushed. Escape? Lin An was silent for a moment, then shook his head. In fact, his biggest problem now is not the lack of ability at all, but the lack of an ability that allows him to quickly tap his talent potential. It has to be faster to fully utilize the talents of immortal cultivators, including the talents of the god of martial arts, as well as various auxiliary talents. Therefore, Lin An did not have any depression. He went straight to the point. He spent 100,000 points and firmly believed in the correctness of his sixth sense. If the hunch is wrong, after purchasing this time, it is not as good as enhancing the simulation days of the simulator, then Lin An may have to think about how to collect some more points before the nuclear explosion. If the sixth sense is correct, then his strength will improve by leaps and bounds, and his growth rate will be increased again. At that time, even if it is a monster after the nuclear explosion, Lin An will have the confidence and certainty to bring his own Tinder base and Dawn shelter towards a better future. Thinking acceleration has been successfully exchanged. Thinking acceleration, gold, your thinking ability will be greatly improved, and you have the ability to speed up your thinking. Current remaining points, 41,557, simulator duration exchange, 210,400 * 10,800 * 10. Current number of days that can be simulated, 60 days. The number of exchange of simulators, 1 * 2000, 14000, 18000. Current number of simulations available, 51. Current remaining points, 13,557. In addition, Lin An's eyes moved, looking at another golden talent. Whether to exchange for golden talent, fantasy space. After redemption, consumption points, 10,000 points. Virtual space, golden. You have a growing storage space, the size of which is related to your mental power. You can store any item, but cannot store living things. The status of the stored items will be stopped in moment of time. Lin An felt his head froze for a moment. After the 2 consecutive golden talents are exchanged, he only felt that his brain once again felt a similar feeling to when he obtained the immortal cultivator talent. The severe headache seemed to have a faint sense of tearing, as if the brain had changed from a single nucleus to a dual nucleus for a while. Everything in front of him began to slow down, and the 2 thoughts in his head kept colliding, almost turning his brain a little white. These 2 noisy thoughts began to split again, and it seemed that in the blink of an eye, he had 2 more personalities. I don't know how long it took before my brain finally stopped, and Lin An calmed down, realizing that the world in front of him seemed to have changed again. Slowed down. No, to be precise, the speed of his brain has become faster. Lin An instinctively looked at the world with his heavenly eyesight. The movement speed of all spiritual chi became slow, and there seemed to be traces to follow. The mind seemed to have changed from a mechanical hard disk to a solid-state hard disk, and the speed of all thinking was accelerated and smoother. Lin An took a deep breath and turned to look at his hand. A spiritual energy suddenly appeared. The next moment, countless fiery red auras that seemed to be brewing flames suddenly appeared, no longer the gray mist-like gestures they had before. This is because, with the rapid rotation of his brain, Lin An can finally separate various auras with slightly different properties in the air, instead of gathering them together. Spiritual power seems to have been guided for the first time. From the original use of open and closed, it has become more refined. Lin An's original brain power was like a pile of fuel. For the first time, the advanced equipment exerted its due power, urging the most precise instrument of the human brain, and it began to rotate rapidly. Everything became slow and clear, and the originally complicated work seemed to become simpler. For a time, Lin even felt that he could still do two things with one mind. Maybe it's already doing two things with one mind now. Obviously, the main focus is on controlling and separating the spiritual energy, but he can still maintain such a fast thinking speed. Is this the ability to accelerate thinking? The next moment, Lin suddenly felt heat in his hands. Countless fiery red auras gathered together, as if they began to spin rapidly. A group of faint flames suddenly began to condense its shape. A flame appeared like a quotation mark, and the next moment, countless flames flickered and burst from Lin's palm. The black light flickered on Lin's hand, and he could clearly feel that the black light was actually injured. At that moment, the burst of fire, obviously Lin quickly controlled the explosion range, let the aura spread out to avoid losing control. But even so, before the Big Bang started, there was a small-scale collision and detonation of some spiritual energy. This impact and heat can actually make Lin's black light, which can't be penetrated by bullets, hurt. Lin raised his hand and watched in disbelief as the little black streamer on his palm lost its vitality and was devoured and recycled by other black lights, turning it into the most basic nutrients. The power of aura is so great, for a moment, he couldn't believe what he saw. Lin took a deep breath and turned to look into the distance. As soon as he flapped his wings, for a while, he didn't even have the mood to think about another storage space, and with a flap of his wings, he flew to the sea. He wanted to try paddling. I want to see how powerful this so-called spiritual energy really is. Lin flew faster and faster. In fact, at this moment, even while flying, he has not given up on constantly thinking about improving his abilities under the blessing of his new abilities. Countless blue and green auras mixed together, as if symbolizing the color of the wind, were continuously gathered by him and condensed around the wings. The black light vaguely felt a sense of separation. Countless existences like small wind blades are constantly hurting the black wings that Lin has condensed. But Lin didn't care. A little damage was at most an energy problem, and after a while, he could find something from the bottom of the sea and give it to the black light to recover. So at this moment, after feeling the split in the wings, he was even happier. This means that the spiritual energy in this world really has attributes, and it is really possible to use the spiritual energy to use so-called various spells. Before, it was only because Lin's pure computing power was not enough, and he possessed strong mental power, and it was not specifically designed to strengthen the computing speed of his brain. This leads to empty spiritual power, but it is mostly used as fuel for various abilities, rather than as a tool. Now, when thinking keeps getting faster, it even seems like there are multiple heads to help Lin think and work. He can use his mental power to perform extremely precise control. It can even be said that it is the first time that the complete mental power is divided into several working together, just like there are several Lin working together to help control and use same. Originally mixed together, it is extremely difficult to distinguish, and it is extremely difficult to plan the auras used together according to the type, but now under the control of spiritual power, they obediently obey Lin's command. Even at this moment, there has not been much research on how to use these auras, or even let the auras of different attributes play different effects according to their proper properties. However, while constantly controlling the aura, Lin's vision and mastery of abilities have reached a completely different level. The rest is just watermill time. With the help of Tianyantong, I can constantly gain insight into the nature of spiritual qi, master the laws of their changes, and use them for my own use. Around Lin's wings, there were two sudden explosions. Countless wind blades fluttered, and there were even small tornadoes behind them. Lin evaded with a teleport and was almost injured by his own actions. Let's not study these sophisticated control methods for the time being. Let's see what their real, biggest and simplest power is. He excitedly stopped on the ocean. The waves of the sea were rolling. He stopped, and he was already some distance away from the coast. If the separate fire attribute aura and wind attribute aura can work. Wind and fire, these two should be auras that can benefit each other. Can they work together? Lin didn't care much this time. He began to remote control the aura, and more than 100 meters away in front of him, he controlled the aura and began to converge. The farther the distance is, the more difficult it is to control, but at this moment, Lin's head is highly concentrated, and he only feels that the world in front of him is a little slower. Countless spiritual qi in the air was separated and gathered by his spirit, and other colorful auras such as black, white, green, gold, etc. were stripped away by him, leaving only the cyan wind element. There is also a flaming fire element. The auras of the two different elements are continuously pulled, collided, swirled, and ascended by Lin. The next moment, above the ocean 100 meters away, a whirlpool seemed to suddenly appear. Countless seawater was swept by the huge wind, and began to form a whirlpool in the place strangely, and a little bit of fiery red began to emerge. A few seconds later, when the aura controlled by Lin and seemed to have reached a critical point, the flames suddenly erupted. Countless fiery red sparks fluttered in the sky, and one after another gust of wind formed tornadoes, and the seawater was sucked into the air, as if it had become a water tornado mixed with flames. But soon, countless white mists evaporated, and the seawater was evaporated into mist by the high temperature. The next moment, a terrifying fire tornado appeared out of thin air. Countless flames swirled endlessly along the gust of wind like a dragon with claws and claws. The huge amount of heat made Lin and faintly feel the heat on his face even though he was 100 meters away. He subconsciously covered black light all over his body, only one of his eyes glowed with golden light, and his celestial vision and spiritual power were almost fully activated. The fire tornado began to appear very unstable, as if it was shaking. After a few seconds, the wind and fire were linked together and almost completely out of control. Lin used his last mental power to suddenly intensify the collision of the two auras and the speed of running in the space. The next moment, a huge explosion sounded. Countless strong winds blew the waves, almost setting off a terrifying wave. Countless white mists of water rose up, but they couldn't hide a huge fireball bursting suddenly in the gust of wind. It was as if a small sun exploded in front of him, and countless flames burst out in an instant. In the center, Lin even saw a little white light. Boom! A terrifying air wave rushed out clearly from the sea. The next moment, the huge explosion made Lin instinctively fly backwards, his wings fluttering wildly, while maintaining his balance in the shockwave. His eyes were full of surprises. The power generated by the explosion at this moment is undoubtedly comparable to a superbomb that has been strengthened 4 or 5 times. Moreover, this explosion is more energy efficient, and countless energy is released in an instant, and all the killings are almost condensed at that point. Lin, who was 100 meters away, was swept by the strong wind, and he still felt that the most important lethality of the explosion was in the center of the explosion point. One can imagine how much damage this explosion center caused in an instant. And this is just Lin's simplest and most basic application of this Reiki. Or a chemist. At this moment, he suddenly felt like a chemist. All kinds of elements are clearly visible in front of him. He only needs to study the reactions of these elements with each other, and control their equivalents. He can make all kinds of terrible chemical reaction. Or a nuke. Will I be able to do this someday? Lin was agitated, but quickly calmed down. Take a deep breath. Now, to cause such an explosion, I need to concentrate on the remote, at least 10 seconds to complete. The effect in the battle is still too bad, and it will also cause damage to myself. It seems that in the next time, I will have to study the aura more attentively. Or, spells. He raised the corner of his mouth, and the black light suddenly became longer. He stabbed a few times under the sea, and a few big fishes that were directly knocked out by the shockwave became the prize he gave to the black light. Lin landed on the shore, stretched out his hand, and looked at the palm of his hand. The ability to think faster, as he envisioned, became a key to unlocking his potential. Well, another golden ability for storage space. He hasn't seen it yet. The existence of virtual space or storage space is a bit strange. Lin squinted his eyes, and felt a little tired mental power carefully, and he could clearly perceive it, as if he was beside him, a folded space that didn't seem to exist in reality. The size is about 100 cubic meters at present. This space is not small. If you calculate it according to the size of the room, it is basically a room with a floor height of about 2.8 meters and a room in the early 40s. In theory, it is quite a good space to be able to use an entire home of more than 40 square meters to store materials. It's a pity that Lin is still a little greedy. If this space can be as big as the previous warehouse, with about 1,000 cubic meters, then this space will be more useful, including transferring and searching for some precious research equipment. Of course, it's still enough for now. What's more important is the effect of stopping the things inside, which means that even the freshly cooked food, the freshly produced fruit or seeds will not expire. Lin squeezed his chin and waved it casually, and some of the seeds he carried with him fell into the space. Take it out again, no problem. Lin spawned it again, letting a mutant plant directly enter the mature stage, and then throwing it into the space. When it was taken out, there was still no change, and everything was normal. It seems that this space can also store plants. So, does the description of this space only refers to large creatures? Shouldn't plants also be considered living beings? Or, is it too short? Lin thought for a while, and then stuffed the mutant plant into his space again. He waited patiently for a few minutes before taking the plant out. Then I realized that the plant still looked business as usual. But when he checked his mental power, he found that the plant was already dead. Oh. This space is interesting. there is some kind of radiation in it, which can cause the death of cells. According to this principle, this space may also have the function of disinfection. After all, those poisons are also part of living things. Lin thought about it, and dropped the mutant plant at will, and the mutant plant began to wither quickly, and soon, it was scattered all over the place. Why don't seeds count? Because seeds at that time were not considered living things. But should they also be considered a kind of living thing? How are living things determined? See if you have the ability to think. Lin suddenly thought, can this space be used to kill enemies? Disguised space execution? Is this a space ability? Thinking of space, Lin couldn't help but think of another ability, teleportation. Although the previous Lin felt that this ability was very powerful, he still did not develop it too much. After all, this ability was only plundered by himself with Sirius, and there was no detailed explanation. And to tell the truth before, just developing teleportation to allow continuous teleportation and precise teleportation is already very difficult. But now that he has acquired the ability to speed up his thinking, perhaps he can see more information in teleportation with his celestial vision. Maybe I can crack this teleportation ability, go deep, and develop it into a space-type ability. Can my storage space be used as an inspiration to help me develop teleportation into a real control space? Lin returned to the camp with this thought. In the shelter, it was busy again at this moment. The corpse tide has receded, and most people are relaxed at the moment, but everyone who knows the inside story knows that there are even greater crises and challenges, and they are still quietly waiting for mankind in the future. How to survive in a post-nuclear world? You must know that what mankind is facing now is not just a simple nuclear winter or various kinds of radiation. Most importantly, the secondary mutations that may be caused by these radiations. The objects of these mutations also include most of the surviving ordinary humans. I want to not be mutated into a monster by radiation. I want to keep as much human fire as possible. Lin is more important than everything at the moment. It is to let everyone get a shot of evolution potion. To meet this point, in addition to solving the problem of transporting medicines, the more important thing is to increase the output of medicines. At this point, Lin has already made up his mind. That is to move the research institute, on your own island. Yes, not in a shelter, but on his own island. Out of selfishness, Lin hopes that he can have his own research and development capabilities in his base, although the main work of the current research institute is to, for all survivors, research a potion that can save lives. But later, after the nuclear, Lin needs this institute to start researching where he needs. Including cooperating with his whimsy, various abilities, and developing various magical items that meet the needs of the evolutionary. It even needs to take responsibility for all kinds of materials in the post-nuclear world. Rather than throwing it into a shelter, Lin prefers to place it on his own island. Like now, if you want to test an ability, you have to fly for half an hour to avoid the sight of the shelter, so as not to affect ordinary people, which is definitely inappropriate. Moreover, it may be dangerous to study various things at that time. It is better to place the research institute on the island alone. Just need to do some preparation. Includes a timed tarmac runway. Even a qualified command tower is needed to locate the aircraft with satellites. Lin thought about it and thought that he needed a large transport plane for his base. After thinking about it, this idea is quite reliable. If you can have your own aircraft, after many times of strengthening, this aircraft may be able to achieve a leap in black technology such as vertical landing. If there is a black technology transport plane, then there will be more things that can be done before the end. Do it when you think of it. After Lin returned to the shelter, the first thing he did was to find his satellite phone. After a few chats with the person in charge Guan Hong, the two reached a consensus. Lin went straight to where the girls were, thought for a moment, and decided to take all 3 girls with him. Go. Let's go to Qianlong base. After he called all the girls, the first sentence was amazing. On the way, destroy a Zerg base by the way. Why are you looking at me like this? He looked at the strange eyes of several girls, puzzled. Zhang Qingshui sighed. Well, I know, what do I need to prepare? It was only then that Lin suddenly realized that even though he thought it was a trivial matter, he had even tested it in previous simulations to ensure safety. But for the girls, this is clearly another difficult task, no less than resisting the corpse tide. Not to mention, Zerg base. What is this? Lu Yao frowned and looked at Lin with worried eyes. Lin didn't hide it. Instead, he will tell the whole story of what he has simulated today. Yes. Use the points today to increase the number of simulations. Instead of wasting, Lin immediately ran a few more simulations. In this case, it can be simulated to 60 days later. He discovered another terrifying hidden danger that, if not addressed now, would become a serious problem in the future. Zerg.